You got me, Michael? Make sure you got it. If y'all will, we'll stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Pretty Thursday afternoon. I'm looking for approval of our agenda by motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you, James. For a second.
I'll second.
Thanks, Sandra. Any discussion on this agenda before we move forward? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Call for public comment. Do we have anybody sign in, sir? All right, first one up,
Dee Dee Dillingham, 19 Tiger Lily Lane, at Coney Bell Tiny Homes. Just wanted to suggest that, because last time we were talking about the Imagine Mills River Plan, our zoning proposal that everybody's worked so incredibly hard on, and we've all been paying attention to it, that we go on as it is right now without taking anything but it's the rest of us, it's the majority, huge majority, I think, probably want it to go and to continue on as it is. Instead of taking something out now and then it's not there, I think we should go forward as it is. And then if you want to take it out later, if it's causing like a major issue, do it then. My other comment is, I think that there needs to be something in there with tiny homes and there in the zoning and a line item for the tiny homes. And I talked to Chad about that too. Two things. If we get bought out again, we've gotten bought out twice. If we get bought out again, can it be in there that we have the first right to buy our lots? Secondly, if any new tiny home communities are allowed, can they have their first right to buy their lots? Because what's happening is our rent has gone way higher each time somebody has bought our community, and some of us are not going to be able to live there anymore. So I just was wondering if we could talk about putting something in there to save our lives, basically. That's it for now.
you.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Brown. I live in Hollowbrook, and I just wanted to voice my support for the UDO and the new proposed zoning. I think the clarity will help everyone. Legal disputes, future planning, making sure it's reasonable, equitable, and we don't have any unwanted development. I'm thinking I don't want like a vape, dispensary across the street from an elementary school. And I just think it'll benefit all of us in order to preserve what we have and what we love and hold so dear, this is our best effort and best choice. And I've read through the whole thing, and a lot of it I don't understand, but in going to all of the town meetings and the open forums and actually meeting with the team directly, they've addressed each and every one of my concerns.
And I really want to encourage you guys to support it, to vote for it. If we don't have some parameters about the growth that's happening, and I'm not saying there doesn't need to be growth, because growth is going to happen, but at least let's have planned growth. let's have some parameters so we don't have something, like the last speaker talked about, like a vape store, or even worse, a data center, or something that would really change the character of our area. We've got a really special place, and we're in this situation that we have this one shot to do this and to get this right. I know there's a lot of competing priorities, and I'm not saying that it has to be so strict that nothing can ever change, because change is inevitable, but we've got to protect the character of our town, because we've got something really special here. And I know we can all look around at other suburb areas of Asheville and see what we don't want to become. So let's kind of let's not miss this opportunity. Thank you.
You wanna wait?
Yeah.
Okay, Bert's gonna wait. Anybody else here for public comment? Give you 3 minutes. Oh. Council comments. Sandy, what you got for me?
I'd like to thank everybody for all the input we've been getting, or I've been getting on the UDO, and everybody willing to listen and work with us on helping to get it fit us. So that's been greatly appreciated and greatly heard.
Okay, and I'm very excited and proud. I get to go on the next Blue Ridge Honor Flight. So we get to go to Washington, take some Vietnam veterans and possibly some Korean War veterans, and just for me to get to spend some time around these heroes is just awesome. So everyone, just if you see one of these veterans, just tell them thanks, welcome them home. There will be a ceremony when they return from Washington Saturday night. It's April the 18th.
Thank you for doing that too.
Oh, and it's an honor to get to go. It'll be my second trip, and I cried the whole time through the last.
That's okay.
So,
All right, that's. James,
No, everything.
how about you, Brian?
I just wanted to congratulate one of our staff members, our planning technician, who welcomed a new member to his family in the last couple of weeks.
So, sure. All right, I don't have anything at this minute. You know me, I'll fire it off when I'm ready. Here's your updates, what you got for?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The only update that I have for you all this evening is a quick update on the North Loop project. So I know that's in the front of mind for many of us in the town of Mills River, especially as the weather's starting to get warmer out there. So the North Loop project, again, is a FEMA project. We've put it out to bid. It is currently in that bid process right now. And as of right now, the bid opening date is for April 1st. And so we're really working on trying to condense the timeline in a way to ensure that the community can enjoy the river access right now in and around the beginning of June is really what we're aiming for right now. So that, as it gets to the hottest part of the year, we also know that, we want to have our families be able to enjoy that natural amenity here in the park. So I'm very excited about that. Please keep up to date on our website. We're going to be continuing to provide updates there, as well as through our process done and really starting to line up the construction piece of it. We're going to be doing a lot of communication out to the community to make sure what areas, may be blocked off, what areas are going to be accessible. We want to make sure we're proactive and giving you all the information that we can to where you can plan accordingly. And also you can come out and celebrate with us as we hit those little milestones to be able to get the park back to where it was pre-Helene. So that concludes my remarks.
Thanks, sir. Looking for a motion to approve our consent agenda, please.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Sanders. Second,
I'll second.
discussion on the consent agenda before we move on. All in favor of approving it?
Aye.
Any against? Hearing none. Okay. The advisory board committee updates. Bert, you want to come on up? Then I'll let you lead or just let Bert go. You got the floor, sir.
Thank you, Bert Lemkes, 134 Rolling Hills Road. Glad to have lived here for 38 years. Amazing. It's a beautiful town. We had this past Friday meeting with the Ag Advisory Committee, and Mr. Malachek and our town manager was there about the UDO. And I think through the work of the consultant, the staff, the steering committee, we've had an overall good feel about the overall exemption of agriculture in the UDO. It's not called farming anymore. It's now bona fide agriculture. But that's just a matter of how you define things. What the Ag Committee has asked, and that's what I'm here really to ask you again, is to take the existing flood hazard ordinance that does not have a full exemption for bona fide agriculture and update that before it becomes part of the UDO. So the overall exemption for bona fide agriculture is throughout the whole ordinance of Mills River. That's the simple version.
Questions for Bert? Was that pretty much a unanimous?
Yeah, that was a unanimous vote of the Ag Advisory Committee.
Any discussion on the bona fide part of that? Did anybody have any concerns with the bona fide part?
Nope. Especially with the addition of the FSA number. I
Okay.
think that,
Makes it reasonably easy.
Yeah.
For anybody.
Yep.
Do you have to sell a little of it or something to make it that way to get to that status?
I don't know exactly
I'm
what
sure.
it is, but it's not extremely complicated to
Okay.
get, like the present use value. That's a complicated process that you have to go through, or the what is it, the ag land preservation.
Any more questions? We need to, while we're right here, right fast, we need to see y'all have, we want to get it on a future agenda to talk about it. In here, all of it.
I mean, I'm comfortable with the way it is, but the way I look at it is I think we did it for just tanks, stuff like that in the floodway, which is
It's
the
got-
biggest.
It ended up having a little more stuff in there once we got down there, but yeah, it's got tanks and it's got some other things.
Yeah, and I think for me, the whole point of protecting the floodway is when we have floods so that you don't have material floating down the stream. And, I'd hate for the fire department to be in the river rescuing somebody or have people in the river trying to do something, and then here comes a 500-gallon tank floating down there. I mean, that's the purpose of it, is to protect that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter I understand it may be water, it doesn't matter necessarily what's in it to me. It's that you have a projectile in the river. And I think it's common sense.
I think, wasn't there some discussion in that meeting that there would be maybe a little bit of give and take on the tanks and that kind of stuff in the floodway?
There can be, but to keep it simple, it would be best to have just an overall development ordinance that is really unified and has that overall exemption for bona fide agriculture. That's the request.
Anybody? Anybody?
I'm talking about it and making sure we all understand where we stand, where we are and why we're there. And make sure it's clarified. There's no misconceptions. If something's reasonable, change things. Have that opportunity, but again, like Councilman Kimball said, it's to protect the floodplain and protect the rivers. I'm always open to discussion. My mind's, I'm not saying just by gosh, nothing else, it's. So
Would staff be looking for a motion to put it on the agenda, or is it something I can just put on the agenda?
Mayor, you're the ultimate owner of the agenda. So at that point, we can add it at your request. I think for guidance for if there's guidance for staff on specific items to bring forward, I would ask for some consensus on what you all would like to see at that meeting, but
I
the
think-
agenda item we can add.
I think I can make that pretty simple on that. I think it's just anything in that flood ordinance that pertains to ag.
Actually, there was an option C when you adopted the floodplain ordinance, which had that full exemption for agriculture in it.
And I'm sure, Bert, they've got some, to be an overall vote like that, they had to be some good reason behind what their thought process was, you know. We're naturally worried about the field, we're naturally worried about the tanks getting loose, and any structure that might not be anchored good as well,
Mhm.
so.
It's just to keep it simple with an overall exemption for agriculture. Nobody in business is gonna put up pricey investments, be it tanks or buildings, in such a way that they would be hurt by a potential flood. That's not the intent.
Mayor, if I may, the one recommendation could be to Bert's request. There were multiple options that were first presented. Staff could put together, obviously bring together the current ordinance and then the other options that were still there as a part of a business meeting discussion item in the future. If you'd
Well,
like.
let's do that, but let's do it pretty soon, maybe the next one.
Okay.
And along with that, can we put on any of the, what else was there, Bird, on that? Just the nuisance also as well? Was there anything on the nuisance that would bother you guys?
No, as long as we keep the agriculture exemption, but,
Oh, okay.
you know, this is the Ag Advisory Board. This is not talking about other issues outside of real agriculture,
Okay.
bona fide agriculture.
Okay. All right, okay.
Do you think we could get it like, in front of us, how it's in the UDO now, so that we can just see if it's conflicting and.
We can break it out, since the UDO breaks everything out by different procedures and sections, it'll kind of be piecemeal, but yeah, we can basically cut those out and paste them together for you to look at with the adopted ordinance and with the other versions.
Did that.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you, Bert.
All right.
Get on
Thank you.
to our regular agenda, our approval of our interlocal agreement with Henderson County.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. If I may, I'm going to ask Autumn to come up and join us from the county. So as a reminder, a little while back now, I feel like it hasn't been too long, but time flies. Henderson County Historic Resources Commission reached out and wanted to have a conversation about the potential of joining this interlocal agreement and the opportunities that may afford some properties within Mills River that would meet the thresholds of that. I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Mills River is the only one that currently does not participate in this program. And so before council tonight, and Autumn's here to answer any questions that you all may have, but also if you all are amenable to this, as you may remember, I think it was the last council meeting was under a business meeting or before the looking at that potential, if you would like to move forward, there would be a public hearing that would be a part of it. So the request would be if you're amenable to set a public hearing for a future council meeting, which would have to be the earliest would be April 23rd. Thank you. And so we could get that go ahead and noticed for that meeting.
Thank you. Are you ready?
I think I got this on. So our Historic Resource Commission has, I do have this on, Donna.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, just checking.
I would say I'm happy to go check real quick. Hold on a second.
Okay, because I'm soft spoken, so.
You're good.
Okay, perfect. So the county enacted an Historic Resource Commission back in 2005. And then they worked for a long time on just kind of getting information out there. And so they wanted to be able to designate historic landmarks. And so the county passed an ordinance in 2015. Since it's in the county's jurisdiction, in order for us to be able to do that inside any of a municipality, you have to actually adopt the ordinance and then through interlocal agreement, agree for us to enforce the ordinance within your jurisdiction. It's not something that we request a fee for. We do this for Laurel Park and for Fletcher. We do not do it for Flat Rock and for the city of Hendersonville. The city of Hendersonville has their own landmarks and they have historic districts as well. And then, of course, the Flat Rock has its own historical stuff as well. So the way that our ordinance is set up is it's not tied to our land development code. It's not tied to zoning. There's not actual districts. It's just individual landmarks that are in the county. If they comply with our requirements, they can be designated as historic. Now, this is voluntary. It's voluntary to come in, and it's also voluntary to come out. So we don't require you to stay in it if you come into it. There are requirements for our ordinance. One of the requirements is, first of all, the structure has to be at least 100 years old. Aside from that, you have to agree to subject yourself to the requirements that are in here. We do have design guidelines if you're going to make changes to the outside of the building. We don't do anything on the inside of the structure. This is just outside. And there has to be something that makes the property historically significant. Either who designed the building, who lived there, an event that happened there, something else that's notable about the time frame. It can't just be that you're old and pretty. So, and you have to go through, our Historic Resource Commission works with applicants, and we try to review every year structures that have aged in. And then we also try to reach out to other properties. It's not something that people break our doors down. We've only designated 2 properties since we adopted this in 2015. Mainly because someone is going to subject themselves to the standards. Sometimes it's just family that doesn't agree, or there's a health issue, or the property sells and a new property owner maybe now is interested. So we just kind of keep working. We kind of keep it open. And like I said, if there's an issue, they can always just request to be removed. Our Historic Resource Commission works with that applicant on helping to determine whether or not they have some historic significance. That is one of our committees that you actually have to provide an application and resume, and you have to have something that makes you eligible to serve on this. You have to be knowledgeable in some way about history. They help the applicant put together a report. Some people pay for those reports. One of the requirements too is you have to be on the state study list. That doesn't mean you have to be designated by the state or nationally as an historical structure. You just have to be designated as you could possibly go on to do that. It does require a quasi-judicial proceeding. You have to present evidence that you are historic, and that goes through our Zoning Board of Adjustment, which sounds weird, but our Historic Resource Commission wanted to be able to work with the applicants one-on-one, so there's no way that they could be objective and hold that hearing. Our Zoning Board of Adjustment is the only board in the county that does quasi-judicial proceedings, so that's why it goes through them. The one difference with this is even though it goes through that and has the evidence, our Board of Commissioners like to review the report and the findings and the order and have like an official approval before it's adopted. They just wanted to be aware of who was going to get the tax abatement. Because once you become designated as historic, you can apply to the tax office for the upcoming calendar year, and you are eligible for a 50% abatement. Just like agriculture, it works the same way as the agriculture. If you come out of the program, you have to pay back the last 3 years of the abatement at whatever the fair market value is. I feel like there's something else I'm forgetting with that. I get a lot of questions about the tax abatement. Like I said, it's not a lot of properties. And with the tax abatement, let's say you had 100 acres in your home and you applied. If just your home is historic, you're only going to get the tax abatement for your house and a small piece, maybe an acre from that. Let's say you had a large piece of property and maybe you had some historic battle that happened there or something else. We're just going to designate for the abatement the portion that should be, not the entire parcel. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Autumn. And I glossed over, and I apologize. Autumn is Henderson County's planning director, and so we have the foremost expert in front of us when it comes to this type of work. And I want to thank you and thank the county for your interest in being able to be here tonight. A couple of questions when you talk about the tax abatement, that it's on the county side, that it does not affect the town. Is that
It's
correct?
actually on both. So I went back and looked. So the tax abatement, let's say the property is worth $100,000. That means if you're eligible, that's 50%. So you're going to have half of that. And then your tax rate is going to be applied to that amount.
Okay, that's good
For
clarification.
both the county and for Mills River.
Understood. And I've received some questions about, how those properties, let's say that they're in. So again, as you mentioned, they're not a ton within the county or even within Mills River right now that would meet all those criteria. But let's just say that they did come in, they did get approved. How are they going to be recognized is the best way to say, is it going to be on a registration online? Will people be able to find it? How do you work with the resident on that approach?
So when they go through the process through the quasi judicial, they have an actual order that we record with the property. So it'll run with the property. There'll be a recorded document with that. We've been trying to find ways to recognize them, like with plaques. So if the property owner is interested in doing a plaque, we've just been kind of budgeting that in. That's something that we're looking at, kind of trying to expand. It does not open up your property. You are not agreeing for the public to come to your property by any means. And right now we don't really have enough, so we haven't ever thought about creating like a tour or anything else. The only closest thing that we're doing is with our Acoustic Trail. We are going through on the trail since it runs through 2 municipalities as well. And if there is things close by that historic, we're making an historic walking tour and just giving you information that you would follow with the app. But it's not going to allow anyone to come to your property. And we've been a little bit leery about just putting it out there. We want to recognize these folks and recognize the property. But then at the same time, we want to make that very clear to the public. You may drive by on a public road, but you may not go down their driveway or trespass.
But you would be working with the property owner to, on their comfort level for
Correct.
that as well. Okay.
Correct. And I will say we have one church that we did. That's one of our landmarks. And the church is already getting its tax exempt. So
Mhm.
of course it doesn't apply, but we can designate.
Have y'all got anybody or any places, I should say, in Mills River?
There's a handful. I can't remember. Matt may remember. We have just did our review for the 2026 year. So any of them that's aged in 100 years.
Okay.
But and I want to say maybe there was like 5.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, 5 or 6.
Now there may be more because we would have to go back in the past. We do a study every year and there's a pretty extensive database. And like I said, some people weren't interested back then, but things change. And so we're going to slowly get around to kind of reaching out to property owners. We have a brochure that we give the property owners and we just have it out there and say, if you're interested, you want to come talk to us, kind of work through the process. We did have one property. It was the Samuel J. Child's house. It was part of the original Brightwater. It's off of US 64. They just went through it. They actually paid for someone to do a full study and report because they're trying to get on to some of the state and national stuff.
Questions?
On here it said, I noticed enforce ordinance on participants. Can you explain a little bit about that?
On enforcing the ordinance or
What kind of ordinances are there?
so the historic resource, the landmark ordinance is a standalone ordinance. And with that has an accompanying design guidelines that go with that. So the ordinance is kind of what I was doing, telling you what the requirements are for it. If you want to be designated, one of those requirements is you're agreeing to subject yourself to the ordinance and to those guidelines. So if you were to make changes to the outside of your home, if it's just routine maintenance, that's fine. That's not a big issue. There are some minor things that we can approve, but if you were going to do major stuff, like you wanted to add on an addition or you're going to substantially change something that could make you lose the historic significance of it, then that's where there's like design criteria. But that's voluntary. You're either going to subject yourself to that to stay into the program, or you're just going to ask to come out of it.
Okay, so there's like no required upkeep that you're not willing to do has to be done. Okay.
No.
And how pretty much voluntary, for people that own the property going forward. I think we should definitely put on the agenda as a public hearing item. See if we get anybody speak against it. If not, I'll just like going on with it. Moving forward, I think it'd be a great thing, honestly.
There's a lot of places.
I know of a couple of places.
To me, it'd be perfect.
There's a,
Pretty much says okay with it.
there's a, on the green sheet there, if somebody's willing to make that motion.
I'll make the motion to set a public hearing on April 23rd to consider the interlocal agreement for the historic landmark ordinance.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Judge. Yes.
Okay. Could we get a modification on that to say to consider and potential adoption?
Yeah.
Potential adoption.
Yeah.
All right, we got a first, second, any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much.
Any other business? Anyone? Hearing none.
Okay.
Entertain a motion to adjourn our regular agenda meeting.
I'll make
Motion to adjourn the regular meeting.
Jeff, second,
second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Staff gets called up, well, we have a motion to go into our business meeting.
I'll make the motion to enter our business meeting.
Brian, second.
And I'll second it.
Jeff. Any discussion before we go on this business meeting? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, hearing? None. That gets it all up. Enter discussion on the studio project.
Mike's going to get Chad up and there he is. How you doing, sir?
Good evening, sir.
How you doing?
Doing good.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah.
Though I wish I was there instead of here, but wait, I can be there in spirit.
Yeah.
Are you guys ready? Shall I just go ahead and jump in?
I think so.
All right, very good, very good. Okay, so we have conducted our 7th and final steering committee meeting with the steering committee members back on the 23rd. We've gotten their comments. Your staff has been working diligently through those and giving us those as we come along. Tonight is our not the last time we'll discuss this, but it's sort of the last opportunity to comment on the initial draft version of the UDO, which you guys have had for a little while. I know we've had a lot of comments today, and I'm here to answer any other questions or take any other input that you guys want to share. I do want to be sure that you realize we are getting ready to post the revised draft version of the UDO on the project website for everybody to look at. There is at least a month for people to review this material, share discussion thoughts with staff. I think staff is conducting an open house for that purpose in April, I think on the 21st. And we will, continue to revise this document as comments come in. Eventually, around about the 4th of May or so, we will seek to fix the text in the document. And what I mean by that is we will no longer make amendments to the draft text in a track change form. We'll do it in an outside document. We do that so that when we advertise for the public, the document language does not change from what's been advertised for y'all's ultimate public hearing. So moving along in great progress. I will also say I think staff has reached out to your legal counsel and posed a series of questions to them, and is facilitating a meeting with us to make sure that they're comfortable with the variety of aspects in the UDO, the language itself, and our hope or intention to address nonconformities and downzoning after the effective date should the document be adopted. So that's where we are. We're in pretty good shape. I wanted to have this discussion with you guys before we posted this review draft version of the document, just to make sure that if you guys had anything that you wanted to you wanted to direct us on, that was reflected in what went up on the project website. So that's my quick introduction. I did get a couple of questions from some of you, and I'll just be quiet and try to answer any questions you got.
May I ask one clarifying question real quick, Council? So, Chad, you had mentioned that soon the consolidated draft will be, the updated draft will be on the website. Do we have a timeline for people to start looking for it?
Absolutely. I think that our initial thought was that we were going to try to post this on the 20th. And I realized that if we posted that without giving the council an opportunity to give us their comments this last time around, we might be putting the horse before the cart. Depending upon the number of comments or changes we get tonight, I think we're ready to post this thing tomorrow morning.
Thank you, sir.
Now, I will say this, we are still working through a few more edits on chapters 2 and 6. So we will remain on target with the posting of that, which will be in a few days. This is sort of an interim production, but it's the vast majority of the document.
All right, questions for Chad? Who's got?
I'll start. I emailed you, obviously, about my two. On the fee in lieu, the monies that would go to capital improvements for the town, is there a timeline on that, or is that something that we would choose that timeline? Like, if we hypothetically got $100 grand fee in lieu money, we have a year to spend it, 5 years?
Great question. There is no statutory time limit for dispensation of collected fee in lieu money. It does need to be done in a quote reasonable time frame and having some general policy parameters around that might not be the worst thing that you ever did. My sense of the fee in lieu and where it will be most useful here in Mills River pertains to parkland dedication. I really think that that's where you'll see the vast majority of fee in lieu requests and fee in lieu acceptance. And in that way, the utilization of those funds is going to depend, at least in part, on the town schedule for, building out the future phases of your park. So I think as long as you are tracking it and asking staff to give an annual report or every other year report on where you are in terms of collections and where you are in terms of the plan for spending those funds, that's absolutely in line with the statutes. There are no temporal requirements for spending the money.
Can I ask a clarifying question as far as fee in lieu of goes?
Sure.
My experience with fee in lieu of was with City of Asheville, and that was basically sidewalk. Are there any restrictions or anything else that fee in lieu of could be? And I'm asking Mr. Golden for his opinion on that.
No, I mean, if
Sure.
you're at, sorry, Chad, this is Brian.
Go right ahead, sir. Go
Yeah.
right ahead.
No, Asheville does their fee in lieu. So when you have a new development, you're supposed to expand your sidewalk and
Right.
make it pretty and put in planter boxes. Or you can pay that fee. Hendersonville does the same thing. Most municipalities do it for the sidewalks, but I don't know that the statute says that there's any limit. It doesn't limit you just to specifically for sidewalks.
That's what
I don't know how broad it goes.
I
But I don't think it's just strictly limited to sidewalks. There's a significant number of development regulations that would probably likely qualify for fee in lieu.
Excellent. Not Chad, not that I didn't believe you on that. I just wanted, from my mind,
No.
clarification.
Absolutely. No problem at all. I have on the screen before you the procedure for fee in lieu, section 2517, the applicability provision, which is sub B. Let me zoom in a little bit. I realize it's probably kind of hard for you guys to see.
Yeah. Chad, just for your knowledge, we have it only on the one screen that you're on. So yeah, we're gonna have to zoom in quite a bit in order to
Okay.
see it. It may be
How is that?
beneficial to read it.
Let's see that. No. Okay.
It's like it's in Durham from here.
Okay. Is that visible to you guys?
I can't, I don't know if all of the staff can.
Can you read out the section, please, and I'll bring it up?
Absolutely. This is section 2.5.17. It's the fee in lieu procedure. And I very, very quickly, I don't want to spend tons of time on this. What I wanted to do was just clarify for you that in the applicability section of this procedure, we set down the range of things that are available for fee in lieu request. And that includes public street right-of-way land for DOT, you know, that could include street drainage, bike lanes, on-street parking, turn lanes. Dedication for parkland, dedication of land for greenways, trails, or sidewalks. We also are considering accepting or allowing people to request payment of a fee in lieu for streets, curb and gutter, bicycle facilities, sidewalk, trails, greenways. And then finally, required open space set aside, required landscaping or retention of existing trees, or parking lot cross access. So there's a variety of different aspects, requirements under the UDO that would be available for an applicant to request a fee in lieu. That does not mean that the town must accept that fee in lieu. It is in the town's discretion as to whether or not fee in lieu would be accepted, or if the applicant would need to go ahead and provide that feature. One more thing I'll mention at the risk of spending more time on this than we need to. We do distinguish between applicant requested fee in lieu versus town mandated fee in lieu. There may be some instances where the town might choose to have an applicant provide a fee in lieu. For instance, with respect to parkland dedication, it's very inefficient to have numerous very small pieces of parkland spread across the town. And what works better in practice are larger centralized facilities that can be easily maintained and have size enough to accommodate fields and so forth. Now, you know, if somebody proposes a subdivision that's far removed from the town's central kind of park area, it makes a lot of sense for the town in that instance to mandate a fee in lieu rather than dedication of the land. So that's one option. Another might be, say for sake of argument, that somebody wants to develop their property. There's a greenway flag on that property in the Go Mills River document, but we also know that there are pending NCDOT roadway widening efforts that are also coming. And in those instances, the town might say, instead of you putting in the greenway now, only for it to be torn up by NCDOT next year, let's just go ahead and take the money from you now, let DOT finish its work, and then we'll use the money that you've given us to put the greenway in after DOT is finished. So those are a couple examples of how the town mandated fee in lieu works.
Chad, am I thinking correctly? If some of these things are in commercial parks or subdivisions or so on and so forth, is those maintained by those entities, their HOAs or COAs or whatever, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, open space, any sort of private shared infrastructure facility, whether that's a road or stormwater control measure or sidewalk, street lights, all of that stuff is maintained by the owners association. Yes.
Okay. Next question. Anybody got another question? Chad, I'm assuming that the screening on top of the buildings, the hiding all the HVAC and all that's still in there?
We've had a lot of conversation about that, and my sense was that that there was maybe not a real strong feeling to carry that forward, at least outside of the town center area. And so I'm operating under the assumption that we're going to make some adjustments to those standards and pull those out. However, you know, we are still working with staff on comments in Chapter 6, okay, which is where those roof-mounted screening requirements are located. So my operational understanding at this point is we're softening those, possibly removing them from everywhere, including, but perhaps not town center. So that's where we are at this point.
Okay.
Who oversees the fee and lieu's?
Ah, what a great question.
Cause there's
Okay.
a bunch of them.
I'm gonna scroll for a minute and, this may look a little bit weird on your screen. What I am going to for Mike's, sake, so he can direct us is, it's section 2.2.1. It's the application summary table. And on this summary table are all of the various review procedures that are inside of the UDO. And among them is the fee in lieu. And so you see it on your screen right here. Right now, as drafted, the way that we have structured the fee in lieu, and this is still under discussion, and I'm glad you asked the question because we can talk about it now. As drafted, we have structured the fee in lieu procedure to be decided by the planning director. Some communities do it that way. Other communities take a slightly different approach, and let me explain what the different approach looks like. In other communities where the planning director doesn't decide the fee in lieu request, the review authority who does is the review authority who is deciding the application that is associated with the fee in lieu. So if you've got a site plan or a rezoning, conditional rezoning, and an applicant, knows that they want to request a fee in lieu, that could be embedded in the application form, and the review authority deciding that application could also decide the fee in lieu request. So that's a hybrid of what we've got. We've discussed that with staff. I think I'm still waiting for final confirmation on which way that we want to go. How do you guys feel about the fee in lieu? Understand that this can be structured in a variety of ways, and just about any review authority you'd like can be empowered to make these decisions. It could be staff, it could be you, it could be a blend.
Anybody? I don't think it's big council decision. We don't have enough knowledge about it. The only thing I will say about this, Chad, is I've run into instances where, as a building contractor, I took fee in lieu money and give to City of Hendersonville or so on and so forth, not because it was more cost effective, but because the actual structure or sidewalk or something had to be constructed in the neighbor's yard across from my subdivision. And then
Right.
here we are building a subdivision, but we're over there putting a sidewalk down through all the neighbors that's been there for 40 years. Because that's where the city said the sidewalk needed to be. So I just think everybody on council and all the citizens need to know, once this is in place, it could be, down the road sometime, it's gonna hit the same way here, of course.
Always a possibility. At this point, we have limited the sidewalk standards and so forth to only those requirements that are depicted in the Go Mills River plan. So the adopted policy guidance that sets down, the various projects, I believe there's 12 or so, their locations, their configurations. And it's only those properties who directly abut or are transected by those already approved greenway projects are the ones who would be subject to these standards. Okay. Now that can always change, as you know. A future amendment might broaden the array of sidewalk requirements for parts of Mills River. And yes, you could find yourself in that situation where an applicant is on the hook, so to speak, for provision of sidewalk, and there could be a case where that sidewalk is actually on the other side of the street. That does happen.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons why you've got a fee in lieu in the first place.
Right. It just takes that burden of us over there tearing up their yard and they're asking, what are you doing over here? And if it's better if the city comes and does it.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. What else we got? Anything on this?
Is it the contractor's engineer that's gonna come up with the price tag for what the fee and lieu should be? Because I know they mentioned the cost of concrete, the cost of grading.
So my familiarity with it is like City of Hendersonville's got so much money per linear foot of sidewalk. So if your lot or whatever, is so many feet long, 120 feet long, you pay whatever they're, and I guess council at some point would, with help from staff or a consultant, would develop these fee schedules for stormwater, gutter, so on and so forth.
That's correct.
In the mountains, though, we gotta remember that it ain't flatland building, so
Right.
we run into a lot more stuff when we gotta put curb and gutter in.
Sure, sure. And the places where curb and gutter are required are pretty limited. But you are absolutely correct, Councilmember Good. The applicant's engineer puts forward an estimate of the cost of whatever, feature is to be subject to the fee in lieu. And the town typically has that estimate reviewed by a third-party engineer of their own. Now, there are a couple of instances where that process is not quite as detailed. A lot of that turns on, just dedication of land area. In those instances, we've got an assessed value from the property appraiser. It's possible, depending upon the size, if it's a simple configuration of land, it may just be a matter of percentage. And that's a fairly easy calculation. But generally speaking, the applicant makes a proposal of the amount, and that amount is checked and approved by the town. And the town may counter an applicant's proposal with an alternative number, at which point the applicant can either choose to accept that number or, make a counter proposal or provide the feature.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? What else we got?
Good.
Sandra's looking through her notes here,
That's okay. Go ahead. I'll catch up.
so, that's we're done.
Don't remember, you have at least 4 more bites at this apple, so this is by no means the end of our discussions.
You don't realize how big that apple was when we started chewing on it. Saying 4 bites, we're about 128 in already.
But hopefully those were some tasty bites.
Yeah, some of them made a fire bite.
A lot of it's, a lot of it was already there. It's just being
Yes.
laid out.
Laid out where,
So
yeah.
to say, oh, it's 600 pages. Oh no, we're all gonna die. Well, actually, it was about 400 pages.
Yeah.
And then by bringing it together, but yeah.
I got while you're looking, I got a question maybe for Mike. We have a neighborhood who, there's a sidewalk debacle that went on because they went over the 100 threshold. Is the fee in lieu for a sidewalk a one-time offer? Like, hey, I brought my initial plans and it was 480 houses. Oops, I went to 101. My fee in lieu is the same, or I was gonna do those sidewalks. Now can I get a fee in lieu later?
Okay, I'm gonna run back to you.
Sure.
I don't believe we have sidewalk requirements based on subdivision unit size anymore.
No,
Okay,
We don't.
I'm going old with,
Okay.
okay.
And Chad, is it just based on the Go Mill River infrastructure plan?
correct. That's accurate.
If it's a public, feature or off-road facility identified in the town's bicycle pedestrian plan, and if they're next to it or falls across their property, then they would be required to build it, and so that would be the stuff that's front end, so that situation would not occur.
Okay. Thank you.
The question you asked, though, was a good one. It's important to remember that some fees and fee in lieu requests come with the application. The applicant knows that they want to request this, or the town knows they want to mandate it. But other instances, fee in lieu comes after the fact. I've already gotten approval. I've already started, and something happens. I found stone underground or some other crazy, unexpected thing takes place. And in those instances, an after the fact fee in lieu or a post approval fee in lieu request can be made. It follows this same procedure. And again, we also have that slated as planning director reviewing and deciding those applications. So this procedure is structured to handle the pre-application and post-approval request kind of alternatives. Does that make sense? Did that confuse you?
No, that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sit in that section.
Okay. So anything else you got for me? Just go ahead and fire it off.
Okay, in chapter 6 for standards, it's part 2.
Mhm.
It was talking about sidewalks again, and I think we answered that a while ago when you said that sidewalks built in development, it says here that they need to be donated to the town. But in
Right.
development, they don't donate them to the town for us to maintain them. It's still on the
Right.
development.
I'm sorry, if there is a sidewalk that is inside a public street, that sidewalk needs to be dedicated to a public entity, whether that's the town or it's DOT, if they will accept it, or a different public entity. We have another kind of classification, if you will, of pedestrian facilities that we are actually calling trails. And those things happen, I'm sorry, not trails, but side paths. A side path is a pedestrian facility that looks and acts a lot like a sidewalk, but it's not in a public right of way. It's on private property. Could be along a private street right of way, could be outside of a private street right of way, but is subject to an access easement. Side paths are not dedicated to the town. Sidewalks would be dedicated to a public entity. Greenways are dedicated to the town. It is the town's responsibility to own and maintain the greenway.
And then I had a question on prohibited signs.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
They kind of go along with what we have now,
Mhm.
but is it gonna be enforced?
I hope so.
It's not now.
It would certainly be our intention that you enforce your sign regulations. And the gist of the prohibitions relate to new outdoor advertising. In other words, billboards, new electronic message boards, any sort of sign that moves, excluding flags or banners or clocks. Anything that's sort of like a gas or air-filled balloon or a figure or an inflatable sign or signs that look like traffic signals. Those are the things that are traditionally prohibited as signage. And those are included here. Certainly, you guys can kick the tires with these for a few months. And if you decide that these are too difficult or that somebody, this is creating a hardship for someone, you can always come back and soften that prohibition in the future without any trouble.
I was mainly talking about signs nailed to telephone poles and affixed to roadside fixtures.
Yeah, not allowed. Signs in the right of way, unless they're governmental signage, typically not allowed, certainly prohibited here. One exception, right? Political signs. Political signs are allowed in rights of way.
Only at certain times and make sure that.
Correct. That's correct.
They have to be picked up.
There's one other exemption that's fairly new. And if Bert's still around, I'm sure he's aware of it, and that is farm signs. Inside quote, farm season, end quote, farm signs may be located within state rights of way.
My next question was, let's see, on the last page, trees within designated tree save areas, and I think we've discussed this before. In reading that, that's kind of stiff. I mean,
Right.
if you have a tree come down, you have to have a tree put back that is like 4 inches in diameter and circumference.
That's right.
Gonna be
That's right.
expensive to buy, to haul, and to plant.
Why, so, yeah, why all of that? Why the difficulty there? And so I'll try to answer the question for you. So generally speaking, we have incorporated a tree protection requirement in the code, and you have kind of two options here under this approach. One is you can simply retain the trees that are there, if you like. If you do choose to retain the trees that are there, you have to locate them within what's called a designated tree save area. And the purpose for all of that is to make sure that those trees that you've retained stay and are not cut down by you or by a subsequent landowner at some point in the future. The intention is that those trees remain in place. Now, certainly, you know, that begs the question, what happens if the tree dies of natural causes? You can always come back into these standards at a future date and allow for natural death and not require replacement. But in this instance, this tree save stuff is all about trying to protect and maintain the trees that are there. One other thing I'll mention to you is, you know, we do grant accelerated credit towards landscaping standards for trees that are retained. So if you choose to retain trees, you get an extra benefit, and that extra benefit is some credit towards required landscaping that you might have to provide. And in that regard, you know, it's in the town's interest to make sure that those trees are maintained in perpetuity, just like we would if those were required landscaping trees. And that's the purpose for the tree save area. The large replacement size is a disincentive for applicants to come in of their own volition and remove those trees for whatever reason. Now, as a practical matter, it is possible for council to permit an applicant to request a smaller replanting size if, for example, the trees are removed from a tree save area in violation, and the you know, the violator wants to come before council, they could request relief in the form of smaller trees at the time of planting, fewer number of trees, etc. There's other options there, and the council can always consider that as part of discussion about how to resolve that. But not a lot of that is set down in the code because of the level of complexity that's associated with that. We include the large tree size as a disincentive. And you don't have to carry that forward. The standards will still work, but the likelihood that you know, a landowner or business owner might do the calculus and decide, well, it's cheaper for me to just buy new trees every year than it is for me, you know, to keep these trees here in the first place, which kind of defeats the purpose of the tree protection standard.
Chad, if I can jump in and ask a question. This is only in a designated tree save area?
Correct.
And a tree save area is where a developer comes in and says, okay, Town of Mills River, I promise to save these trees.
Yes,
It's an agreement. As part of their development, they're making a promise. And the promise is to keep those trees, or if something happens to those trees, put trees back. And that's to
Correct.
keep a canopy area, a green area for all the benefits of having those trees. This is
Correct.
not my house. If I decide I don't like stepping on holly leaves anymore and happen to go out, not that I would ever do that, or for whatever tree I decide's in my way and I want to cut it down, that's none of the town's business. Is that
Correct.
correct?
that's absolutely correct.
Does that make sense?
That's what I was wondering.
These standards do not and should not apply to individual, single-family detached dwellings on their own lots. That will be way too difficult for you to keep up with. It's way too onerous. If a person owns a tree on their property and they wish to cut it down, they should be allowed to do that.
What's the fine if they don't take care of putting the tree back up or whatever? Do we have a fine schedule for that? Cause they don't, the rental houses, they don't even take care of the buildings, much less worry about the trees on the outside.
Right, right. And I'm not sure, if it was a rental property with rental houses, whether or not the standard would be triggered, we need to know more about the application. But I do not yet know the fee schedule, for what the town is doing. Generally speaking, the remedy for removal of trees in a tree save area is to replace the trees. Now, I don't know that we have, there's going to be a civil penalty associated with the violation of the ordinance. I'm not sure that civil penalty is intended to replace or substitute for the replacement of the trees. Ultimately, the trees need to be put back. There may be fees on top of the cost of replacement, but that's in addition, not instead of, if that makes sense.
I could see where most of these would hit on like conditional zoning and we were to deal possibly to save
Sure.
a certain batch of trees.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's always a possibility.
On the next page in that chapter 6, there is a payment in lieu of providing required replacement trees.
Yes.
So they
Okay.
could work something out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as it's somewhat of a voluntary situation and not a HOA filling situation, I feel better about it.
Right.
Yeah, it's only where there's an agreement to
To
save
save
area
'em.
of trees. And that's generally, we see that in developments where this is our tree save area, blah, blah, blah. Okay, if it's a tree save area, save the trees. Promise to keep the trees. Trees die, they age out. Well, let's put them back. So,
Not necessarily something where you come in here and staff says, we wish that you would save this acre of trees here since you're building over here. Not
right, it's all
necessarily.
part of
Okay.
that agreement when it comes forward. And
Okay.
we as a town wouldn't go to someone's land and say, oh, I love that tree. We're gonna make that a tree save area. You can't cut it down.
Okay.
There are places that do that. You cut it, and we don't wanna be
Well,
that.
that's why I don't want that.
We don't wanna be that.
Okay.
So,
We're not gonna say what species of tree to plant, but we have a list, so that way we don't go plant right there.
that's true.
Yeah.
They did have a list
Correct.
of
We do not,
invasive plants they didn't want planted, but I think on that list, they left off bamboo and kudzu.
we do have, inside chapter 9, so thank you for that. And we'll make sure in the the prohibited vegetation section, we have a table here. And we don't have bamboo, and we should. As far as kudzu goes, I'm not sure that kudzu would be creditable towards a canopy tree or an understory tree or a shrub. There's nobody would plant it because there's no credit for it. But you're right on the bamboo, and we'll supplement this list, this invasive species list, on, to include the bamboo so that that's clear.
Anything else?
It's on the floor, I could read.
Anything else? Anybody else? No? Staff? Don't anything? I think we're good to go again. So we take the next bite.
Absolutely, sir. I did hear tonight a comment about tiny homes. We have added permanent tiny homes as a principal use type, so there's clarity in the standards there. I'll let your council talk to you about provisions for first right of refusal. So we've got that. We'll work with staff on adjustments to the special flood hazard area exemption for bona fide farm uses, and we'll try to make sure that the regulation is structured the way that it needs to be. I've got the note on bamboo, and I think for the next step, we're ready to put the document out there for the public to look at, and we'll continue to accept everyone's comments over the next month and a half or so.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, ma'am.
When you put the next document out, is it coming in sections or as the entire document?
How about both? How about we provide it as a single PDF and as a series of chapters?
Okay.
If you've got really fast internet, downloading the full PDF is not too difficult. If your internet's really slow, you probably would want to do it chapter by chapter.
Okay. And about how many pages do you think it's going to be?
Well, what's going to be released is right at 600 pages. Well, what's going to be released is in the next, like tomorrow, will not include chapter 2 and will not include chapter 6 because we're still working with staff on those comments. Okay, so what we're looking at for tomorrow probably be about 400 pages. All told, the document sits at 598 pages right now. Now that's going to grow just a little bit because I've got some more illustrations to put it in, but that's about where we are.
All right. I think we're good to go. Have a nice night. Thank you.
Fantastic,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure. And we will see you guys soon.
Thank you. When you're ready, staff, we'll move on with our speed study.
So Mr. Malachek is going to be joining us here in just a minute, but
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, I can do it. Yeah, do it.
can we have a motion for the recess?
But make a motion. Recesses for a few minutes.
I
ma-
make a motion, we take a 5-minute recess.
Second.
Jeff and Brian, any discussion while we're recessing? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
pretty picture. I have no idea. Brownsville, town. Might be up in the Shenandoah Valley or something. Maybe.
Take a picture, no, really?
About what? That all the picture. Oh, yeah.
Send us a picture somewhere else.
Yeah. They're wearing them out on 280. Muffled.
Might not be the end of the world.
Right,
Yeah.
because if you got mufflers, you know.
You wouldn't hear it anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
But man,
doesn't
we
have
hear
to be
them,
new.
we hear them all the time. What's your last year?
I made sure it was not a copyright.
I'll make a motion that we come out of recess.
Second.
All right, thank you, council. Michael Malachek, Town Planning Director here. So tonight we're going to discuss the results of NCDOT's speed study for multiple roads in town. Of course, now the flood. Oh yeah. There we go. So just a quick background on how we got here. So we've been getting more complaints about traffic, truck noise, vehicle speeds on state maintained roads in Mills River. The last traffic schedule adoption or speed limit change to a state road in Mills River was in 2017. Those were actually submitted by DOT. So this is the first time the town's taken proactive action looking at this. And then again, as I said, complaints have been increasing over the past few years just because of development, growth, and increased traffic. Covered this a bit last time, but basically the statutes give municipalities general authority over public streets, except when they're controlled by the state. So when they're DOT, state roads and highways. The town does have a traffic schedule. The only thing in it is the 45-mile-per-hour section on Boylston Highway in the center part of town between 191 and 191. And basically for municipal streets, the statutes give us broad authority to regulate those streets. Again, R1 municipal street being Town Center Drive out front. Here's just an example of the traffic code or traffic schedule. So if council chooses to move forward with adopting some of these ordinances to change speed limits on our roads, or excuse me, the state roads in town, you'll see this grow, and that's normal. If you look at Fletcher's, it's probably a couple pages long because basically they've documented what the agreed upon speed limit is on all the state roads in the municipality in addition to their municipal streets. So how do we get to this process? What does NCDOT do? So basically they're responding to council's request or the town's request to, restudy these roads and see if the speed is appropriate. They look at the surface of the road, what's the condition, especially, number of driveway entrances, curvature of the road, visibility, and then they also take speed measurements as well, and basically determine what the speed limit should be based off that. Also crash data. So to the results. So we had a couple different sections we looked at based on council's input. So one of them we talked about was extending the slower speed limit on 280, both as you come south into Mills River before hitting Old Haywood Road, and as you exit the center part of town, as you get out, towards Schoolhouse. I think we even talked about going to Sweetwater. So DOT reviewed those whole areas, and there was a warranted reduction for speed just in this one section between Old Haywood and Cardinal. I actually asked if there were any other warranted sections, and they basically said no other sections of NC 280 warrant a speed limit reduction, and then it's an enforcement matter. So for this section of road between Cardinal and Old Haywood, the traffic counts were about 12,000 a day. I think the speed here is pretty interesting. The 85% speed, so the speed at which most traffic travels, was 64 and 67 miles per hour here. The average speed was 55 to 58, and so their recommended speed limit reduction is 50. Because technically from Cardinal to 280, it's still 55. It says, traffic signal ahead, 45 mile per hour speed limit ahead, but that doesn't start till Old Haywood. So that's their recommendation, is lowering it by 5 miles per hour in that one stretch. Looking at the southern part of 280, coming out of the central portion of the town, again, they studied approximately between Presbyterian Church Road and about Schoolhouse Road. So you can see here, traffic count, 10,000 to 11,000. 85% speed at which most traffic travels here is even higher, 75 to 67 miles per hour. The average speed was 65 and 59, again, depending upon direction. And their recommended speed limit reduction for this area is also 50, so a 5 mile per hour reduction. Again, I did ask if there were any other sections, all the way to Schoolhouse to Sweetwater, and they stated that was not warranted. And I believe it's also just because it's a major transportation corridor. Banner Farm Road was one of our biggest wins in terms of reduction. And honestly, staff's heard a lot of complaints from some of the folks out there just about speed and traffic noise. And so it was studied officially between Haywood and the town limit line, which is near Winter Crest Drive here before the turn at Ladson. So you can see the traffic count was about 3,000, 85% speed at which most traffic traveled was 42 miles per hour. Average was 37, and so they did recommend a 10 mile per hour reduction from 45 to 35. I did ask them to study beyond that because the same road conditions continue to the Duke substation before you get to the straightaway in the floodplain. There was no concurrence needed from the county. They just studied it, and they said 35 miles per hour would be warranted there also. Now, the town doesn't need to do anything to implement that, but I thought that'd be helpful to know as well. The eastern section of Schoolhouse Road was studied. Interestingly, the western portion between 280 and Banner Farm is already 35 miles per hour. This eastern section is 45 currently. You can see the traffic count was about 3,000 per day. The 85% speed was 47 miles per hour. Average was 40, and so they recommend the speed limit also dropping 5 miles per hour here from 45 to 40. This is from Banner Farm Road to Haywood Road, so across from the Asheville Water Treatment Plant near Haywood and Ladson. The other one we had them look at was Jeffress Road. This is currently posted at 45 miles per hour. So you can see the traffic count there was 1,600 daily trips. The 85% speed was almost 60 miles per hour. The average speed was 50, and so their recommended speed limit is 40. So we're looking at a 5 mile per hour reduction there as well, from 45 to 40. We did work with, I think, one of the church schools there to have some school zone signs put up just for a little more awareness, because there was concern about traffic from the town. The other one we looked at was Butler Bridge Road at the very eastern end of our jurisdiction. So our jurisdictional line covers the road, but this is technically unincorporated county, and then this is in town limits. This is a single, basically half-mile section of 55 miles per hour between 35 near Taproot Homes and 35 going up to the school. And so traffic count there was about 8,000. 85% speed was 57 miles per hour. Average was 50, and so they're recommending a 10 mile per hour reduction there as well. I did ask for it to be consistent at 35, but again, DOT not only prioritizes safety with lowering speed limits, but also the traveling of goods. And so when you have a straight section of road with no driveways, it's most likely going to warrant a slightly higher speed limit. That is the summary of their diagram. So again, we basically got a 5 mile per hour reduction on all the studied roads except for Banner Farm and Butler Bridge, where there was a 10 mile per hour reduction. So really the next steps was just to present this to council, see if there's any questions, feedback, and then if council desires, just getting consensus if you want to move forward with staff drafting ordinances to consider for adoption. Basically, the state requires us to concur with their study results to actually lower the speed limit, and we need to pass an ordinance first to do that. And then we would incorporate those into the town traffic schedule as well. Once we pass the ordinance and give it to the NCDOT staff, that gets passed up to the state traffic engineer, and that's when the final approvals happen, and then eventually the signs get posted.
Does that need to be a public hearing, or could that be part of the consent agenda? I've dealt with it as part of the consent agenda.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be part of the public hearing. Not every.
Don't pass it. I really want to drive faster. I don't think they'll have many people showing up saying that. No.
Outside. But yeah, no, and I don't know if you want to have it, you can do it certainly as part of your consent, but if code of theirs pursuant to that rule.
Cool, thank you.
And this is really just the start. I mean, this is the first time the town's done this. So I mean, if there's other roads, down the road that council wants to study or wants DOT to look at, by all means, bring that up to staff and we can have additional conversations.
We can ask for roads that are dipped out.
Within reason. I mean, the Banner Farm one, I've actually gotten complaints from folks outside of town limits, but on that same section, the Banner Farm. And so it was something I kind of tacked onto the request later, and DOT said they hadn't done the study yet, so they'd be happy to. But again, it's municipalities they need the concurrence from. I did check with the county planning department. They had no issues with it, and DOT said they didn't need their concurrence either. Now, if we're looking at roads far removed from the town, I'd have to ask about that.
I see what you're saying. We're asking the DOT to look at this, and then it'd be their rule, not our rule, so we can at least.
We're
Yeah.
pretty much passing along a
It's our
concern to them.
ordinance for them to okay, really. We got to get their blessing. Thank their folks.
Yeah, DOT, if it's an NCDOT road, they set the speed limit. But if it's in a town, then we pass a concurring ordinance to make it enforceable. We have lower speed limits. Our statutory speed limit's 35 inside town limits. So anywhere you see a speed limit that's higher than 35, the DOT has passed an ordinance to set that at a higher speed, which is totally legal. And there's places where we don't have a concurring ordinance, that speed limit existed 23 years ago when we became a town. So anything that's happened since then, we pass a concurring ordinance. And anyone can call DOT and request a lower speed limit. You can request a traffic signal, you can request a study. That's what they do. But as a town, you know, we work together with them. So that's how it's okay for us to say, hey, well, have you thought about the other section? And then they can look at that.
Yeah.
So,
I just want to say, Councilmember Moore, to that point, staff also receives comments from the community, and we're happy to take those comments as well. And so when we look at these, we also, you know, bundle those into that as well. So again, you could, to Councilmember Moore's point, anyone can request that, but also I want the community to know that they can go through us, and we will also work to address those where we can.
yeah, and DOT does an engineering study, and they use the criteria that was talked about here, but that makes it enforceable. For us to just go out and say, well, I think that ought to be 10 miles per hour. And unless there's a study behind it, that's hard to stand up. So that's why we work with them, and thankfully they're good neighbors and good partners, and they do the engineering part of it. So
This is a type A question for me. So like, we can't cover this last tenth of down to the intersection, like. Yeah,
In the requested study area, it was from where the 45 mph ended to Sweetwater. And this was the warranted reduction.
I guess my thing, would they be willing to, if we ask them, would they be willing to go to the intersection? Or is that a reasonable request that we can make?
I mean, you can always ask.
I mean,
I don't know the answer, but I'm happy to
Okay.
ask.
Only thing I'm gonna say is I've said it before, they put this big old road in here to move us traffic. Every time they put a light up or slow it down, it's bogged up. So y'all keep that in mind too. And then I don't wanna hear nobody complaining in here at that podium when they start getting lit up with tickets. They'll get as many of us as they get anybody else, cause we're in that zone the whole time. So it happened last time. We put that 45 through Ingles, they wore us out. I just said, no, thank you. Y'all asked for it, the majority asked for it. So just keep that in mind. Your insurance will go up. It will not come down when that blue light comes on behind you. It's your decision to run 45 or 55. We'll work around you. But I'm just saying, it happened last time. 6 or 8 people come and spoke because they got a ticket. I have to speak about that. Yeah.
well, you know, we could just say statutory speed limit's 35 inside town limits.
I would never
know.
say that, sir.
I said we could. We could do a lot of things. But, you know, once you're in a town, especially where there's more development, you know, and there's more, and a fire department right there on the side of the road. I mean, there's a lot of things that point to a lower speed limit. So I think it's reasonable to ask them to extend it down to on the Schoolhouse Road, because that's a signalized intersection. And you should slow down as you approach a signalized intersection, technically. So they get technical. And you never know when it's going to change. So, something to, you know, if you want to say, we love it, we're thankful, how about just a little bit more? If that's reasonable. I think that's, if y'all agree, going down to school.
I guess my question would be on the one, in the 280, that way that was 55 and for 50. I mean, if it's truly an average speed of 75, are we accomplishing much?
You're gonna get what I told you you're gonna get.
You're gonna.
Cause they're not gonna slow down for months. They will slow down, but it'll be months.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll say is in the presentation I gave whenever we had this discussion first is speed limits are just half of the mechanism. The other half is enforcement.
If they wasn't doing 75 and 80, we wouldn't be having this discussion. We wouldn't be discussing Jake breaks, and we wouldn't have the crashes we have.
I'm just saying, it seems unproportional. The other side of 280, your first slide was 55 and it was 64, so 9 you're fine, 10 you're mine. But this is, you know, really speedy.
I think once everybody gets through the main red light for 191, Boston Highway come in, then if they're going to Brevard, then they gas it. Like Chan.
Be in that left lane and don't gas it, see what happens. Fortunately, I've got a German Shepherd deterrent to road rage.
Coming down 280 tonight. There was a truck beside me and the fire department truck was behind me. So, I mean, they was rolling. If I didn't roll on, I'd have been run over or I'd have been the problem.
I mean, I definitely think, one of our, strategic goals is safety in the community. I think this definitely falls in line with that. I mean, we're being told that it needs to be dropped, so they're the experts.
I'm afraid I'm for it.
Yeah. When you got it. Send it to the mayor. All the citizens to know it's coming. When you get it, you got it. The mayor said way before it ever happened.
Great question. Money goes to the school system.
Yeah.
And we love the school system, but that's why it's really hard to make it financially. So if we had our own town police department and we were able to keep that money, then we wouldn't have to fund a police department based on 70-mile-per-hour speeds on Highway 280. There's a town in Texas called Wascom, Texas, right at the border of Louisiana. And you don't speed through that town or you get pulled over by a brand new patrol car. So, it's just not the way it is here.
All right, we'll move on to C, our nuisance ordinance.
Okay. Let me get the person. No. All right, so we're here tonight to go through draft nuisance ordinance language in response to council's feedback and planning board feedback. So again, just quick background. Staff was actually here about a year ago when we talked about some problem code enforcement cases. I think that's when fine limits first came up, but it's actually good timing that we're here a year later with draft language. Council had discussions in September about the nuisance ordinance and then directed the planning board to take that up in October. They took that up at their first meeting and did a really in-depth review in October, November, and December. That's where a lot of these recommendations came from. And then council had discussions at the January 8th meeting, and we brought a conglomeration of feedback or changes for the ordinance at the February 12th meeting. And it was at that meeting where there was direction to draft something for council to react to. Some of those goals for the changes were maximum fine amount of 3,000, separate standards for residential and commercial properties, specifically related to outdoor storage and junk vehicles, focus on public health and safety, not aesthetics, etc. Just wanted to overview our process right now. So the way it works now is that one, staff only responds to valid complaints. So if we get a complaint, whether it's a phone call, an email, someone submitting it through our online portal, that's when staff goes out and investigates. Currently, the way the ordinance is written is if there's an investigation, that's when staff sends a first notice of violation. And then there's basically a month period between each violation letter to give the property owner or the occupant time to react and contact staff. If it goes through the whole process, eventually you get to a final notice of violation with fines. And then again, as discussed a year ago, there were some of those problem cases where, we've had no contact whatsoever, where there may be, enhanced enforcement, code enforcement mechanisms needed through like orders of abatement through the court. Correct. Sorry. Yeah. I was told to speed through it. But yeah, so at any point in time, if someone contacts us, again, we're heard loud and clear, community focused code enforcement. So if someone reaches out to us and say, hey, I got your letter, what does this mean? You know, of course, we're going to talk to them. And as long as they're engaging with us and making progress to address the issue, we're going to give them the extension. So at any point in this process, whether it's after the first notice and here, even if it's at the final notice and they're like, hey, I never got all these letters, we're going to work with them to remedy that issue without going through the process and having more fines accumulate. This is not meant to be punitive. The fines are just there basically, again, just like we were talking about with speeding, as an enforcement mechanism to get people to respond. But that's a last resort for staff. So let's go through some revised language. The full ordinance is in your packet, but I just want to kind of highlight some of the major things. So we clarified in the current ordinance, agriculture is exempt. In this revised ordinance, bona fide farms and exempt agriculture is also exempt. We just use the same definition in the UDO, which has more teeth behind it, and it also includes that FSA item. So again, there's for that one, it may be a lower bar for folks to participate in exempt agriculture through that, and they would be exempt from this as well. So that was a change staff made. One thing we heard loud and clear was, have clear definitions, because again, when we went through the ordinance last time, I mean, I think it had junk and there were, 8 sentences just with a list of materials. So we went through, looked at other example ordinances, again, took council's feedback, planning board feedback, and have specific definitions for, solid waste. What's the difference between solid waste and trash? And trash, you hear this thing about putrescible matter. It basically means stuff that can rot and attract insects like flies. What's debris? And so again, happy to take questions later on this, but we did go through and update all these definitions so there's more clarity. And again, that results in less discretion from staff at the scene when we're investigating, because we know exactly what the ordinance says these specific items are.
And Mike, real quick, where do we get these definitions? Where do we find them? What vetting has been behind?
Other example ordinances.
Okay.
So we revised the actual prohibition. So again, it's only a violation if it's a prohibited nuisance listed in this section. And I'll go through these briefly. So we kept the improper sewage or wastewater disposal as number 1 there. The improperly abandoned cistern or well pit, we've changed it a little bit to make it a publicly accessible one, because as the mayor said, there may be holes or mines up on a mountain on someone's private property. But the point of this, and how I've seen it in other places, if it's accessible for a child to fall down something because it's near a public road, that's the concern, not that there's some hole on someone's property up a mountainside. And so we made some of those changes here, that if it's a publicly accessible condition like that, or similar condition where someone could fall and become injured, that's the nuisance. C, again, just tighten that up to say failure to keep trash. Again, that potential rotting matter in an enclosed building or container, that was one council said to keep. We struck the accumulation of animal carcasses. Again, never gotten a complaint for that anyway, so struck that one based on planning board and council feedback. The other one we trimmed significantly was the significant outdoor storage, and I think previously it listed a whole bunch of things, and so we tightened that up to solid waste, which can include junk, trash, or debris, but specifically where insects or vermin can harbor. So if it's just stuff sitting outside under a tarp, that's going to be less of an issue. If it's a pile of stuff where there's water accumulating, where there may be rodents living in it, that could be considered a prohibition. But you'll see this last word here, subject to the provisions of this section. And that's where we have the standards for non-residential and commercial broken out. We struck accumulations of rubbish or junk because it's already covered in the other sections. We have junk motor vehicles, but you can see the same here, subject to the provisions of this section, where we have separate standards for commercial and residential. There were a couple different lines about breeding grounds for vermin and mosquitoes. We consolidated that into this one line G. And again, only if it's a condition that creates risk to public health and safety. So if there's one tire with some water in it or a bird bath, that's not going to rise to that level. It's got to be something significant, like a full swimming pool that's green, that is a true breeding ground for those types of pests. And then H, we actually expanded a little bit, because I've had this question, and again, happy to take feedback on this, but it used to just say use of basically an RV as a principal residence. And I expanded that to a use of a recreational vehicle or unpermitted structure or accessory structure as a permanent dwelling, which is a better term, and specifically included defined as occupancy of an RV for more than 2 weeks outside of an RV park. So again, we know people are going to be visiting their family, might have a camper or RV on someone's property. That's fine. It's only when it gets to a point where it's there for multiple weeks, and again, only in response to a citizen complaint, where staff would go out, and then actually it would be on us to document that it's there for 2 weeks. I did include the unpermitted structures and accessory structures just because, believe it or not, we've actually had complaints in situations where unfortunately someone's, in a shed or something. And then the last one is recreational vehicles or any type of vehicle or manufactured home that's basically used to store solid waste within the interior of that vehicle. So again, just more clarity there. But I think there was concern about, well, what if it's in the back of the pickup truck? Well, that's not the inside of the vehicle. It's if the inside is stuffed with solid waste. And so those are the revised prohibitions or feedback from council. Feel free to interrupt me with any questions.
If we can, Mike, let's go back real quick. Let's just see if there are any questions from council.
Good.
State standards. I was just trying to look that up. I was trying to look up that. Oh, you're good. I know you probably don't have an answer. Moving forward, I know we can't vote on it. Yeah, no, and I'm happy to. I'm gonna get it. We're training. I'll pay it, right? I still have the training wheels on and all that. No, I mean, years ago, I did a lot of work on salvage yards and rewriting ordinances related to those prohibitions. I'm just not the way that Mr. Malachek changed it. I wasn't able to compare the two. Certainly I'll be able to do that before, because I think your question was, are we more restrictive or less restrictive than what's allowed under North Carolina law? And yeah, because yeah. So, right, because there's certain statutes that are floors and you can't make them less restrictive. Your ordinances would have to comport with those. I didn't compare the two for tonight.
I think it's moving forward.
Yeah. And that was gonna be my recommendation as well, is, we want feedback from council tonight, because this is the first time y'all have seen this in a draft form. And so going forward, whatever changes we get, obviously, we're gonna want to share that with the town attorney before, if council wants to move forward with consideration of adoption.
So I got one question on the RVs in this 2 weeks. So where do we stand if someone has sold their home, bought an RV, put their septic and all in, and we're constructing a home, and they're staying in that RV? So they got an out somewhere?
No, but the UDO does.
Okay.
The UDO allows temporary dwellings, and there are certain situations, you get a permit, so you're aware that, you need to pump your black water tank and, make provisions for all that. But there are provisions in the UDO, just based on what the consultants drafted, for temporary dwellings for home building, for disaster situations, and I think there may be one other. But in our ordinance now, and I've gotten that call actually a few times this week due to one specific piece of property, the answer basically has said, well, it's prohibited. You know, again, we don't have the ability to go police this real time, but if we do get a complaint, we obviously need to enforce the ordinance.
I could just imagine someone's home and those are burning down and they already have a septic and water there.
Hmm.
And can't bring an RV in to live on their place to keep it on their shed and their tools and everything else. And then you have to, yeah, it don't make any sense. So as long as they got it now, I'm okay with it.
I'll make a note of that because again, it's in the UDO, but that should be cross-referenced. I mean, I know they're separate ordinances, but cross-referenced to
Okay.
basically recognize it.
Okay.
I think that's easily remedied by just saying unpermitted RV.
Oh, unpermitted.
Hmm.
I got you. I see it there. Unpermitted structure. Okay.
Any other feedback on the prohibitions? And I'll move forward. So commercial outdoor storage. So we heard loud and clear that there should be allowances for commercial outdoor storage. I believe the way it's written in Henderson County's code is they basically say 1/3 of the rear yard setback, and then there's one other line that says, you know, commercial storage is allowed for business related uses. So we went a little further than that. Again, this is all just for reaction. That basically we said you could have 1/3 outdoor storage in any yard. So if it's the front yard, here's that listed in number 1. Now there is a larger setback from the front property line and basically something saying you shouldn't block line of sight because again, if it's near a road, you want to be aware of those safety concerns. And then for the other ones, it allows 1/3 of the rear or side yard setbacks to also be used as outdoor storage. Again, as long as nothing's being blocked and as it's 15 feet away from the property line. Number 4 basically says that if it is storage of solid waste and goes into a description there of what that is, it shall be only stored within an enclosed building or basically organized in some manner, not just dumped out of the back of a pickup truck or concealed by an opaque fence. Now, I know this gets a little bit into the aesthetics, but again, just drafting it for feedback. That's really just, if you look at that last line, it says, or other means so it's not visible from the property line or abutting properties.
Michael, on that one, I know there's one instance where one location in Mills River where a dumpster facility, or maybe 2 now, that runs, and then like on holidays, they go get and change out, but they bring the dumpsters and set them on their lots. So the landfill's open. So if it's in the dumpster, if it's up and over and the neighbor sees it, or we don't have an issue, or how?
I mean, the dumpster itself, I would say, is some type of containment and obviously related to the business, but it's probably gonna have a sticker or some logo on the side. Now, best case scenario, you know, I know they don't all have this, but sometimes they've got the coverings that come over, so there's nothing blown out by the wind onto the roadway. But I wouldn't see that this applying to that, because again, this is just outdoor open storage of solid waste.
I can
So
see that being called.
yeah.
On.
And then number 5 is basically any storage, even if it's related to a business that poses a public health hazard. So whether it's a fire hazard, again, the mosquito breeding ground thing, or infestation of vermin. If it's a public health issue, then that would be prohibited. And again, I know there's some discretion there, so I don't know if we need to firm that up a little more, but again, just first draft for council's feedback.
One I got with that one would be tires. I mean, everybody knows that whole tires if they're outside out from the cover. They might have to sit there a few days till they get changed out with the new tires. Before you go, they're selling tires. They're all outside. They're not inside on the used lots. I'm just saying, I don't know. I mean, I've lived here my whole life. Mosquitoes has not been a major factor to me, but might be others.
How would that specifically, like while we're on tires, how this is written, would there be?
Put a tarp over it. Because if you prevent the water from getting in the tires, that solves the issue.
I mean, what you should know about the Waycaster. I mean, that was a huge, they were stockpiling a bunch of tires that caught on fire. And if people complained about smoke coming off a, burning wood off a mulch pit, how much do you think they're gonna complain about rubber going up?
What we're gonna do if we do that, we're gonna force all these tires to change facilities, possibly move out of Mills River.
I'm not, that's not the goal, and that's not,
That's
and
what I'm
that's
saying.
no, and that's an extreme, and I'm not trying to do that. What I'm just saying is, I think there has to be a common sense approach. If somebody's got 200 tires stacked up outside, that's not, hey, I'm changing tires. Okay, that's something totally different. So there has to be some middle ground.
So you wanna go right out there next to Burger King, it's probably 200 out there per second. That's my problem with it. And as high as everything's getting, I mean, there's a lot of poor folk, it's gonna be tires, you know, it's gonna get poured in.
But I think he has a fence around his building too.
Uh,
I mean, he has all that stuff shielded. I mean, there's regulations, and you're talking about the city of Hendersonville?
pour right in there.
You're talking about the city of Hendersonville there. Well, I guarantee if it's the city of Hendersonville, it's way tighter than ours. I mean, if we're complaining about 600 page, theirs is about 1,200 pages. So,
I know, but I'm just talking about that particular tire facility, go right in the lot there, right there.
sure. I mean, I get what you're saying, but, and I come from a different side. I operate a business, and if you're a business and you're in a community, it is your responsibility to be a responsible member of that community.
Understand that, but being responsible also, applies to inflation. As soon as we mandate all this stuff go inside, prices got to go up, cause you gotta build,
Right.
put shit in.
And I wouldn't store my tires outside because if they're outside at night, somebody's just gonna walk over there and steal them. So what's the difference?
Yeah, so, and on Airport Road, they're outside, they don't.
That you know of. Okay.
I'm just saying, I just don't want us to run off our little businesses that we depend on to get our stuff taken care of around here. It would be, I wouldn't feel like I was a good citizen if I drove by that place to go out of town to buy my stuff. That's where I'm at with it. I would hate the thoughts of running one business out of this town.
And in our business, I have to rent another 6,000 square foot facility to hold parts that I can't store outside. And that's in the city of Hendersonville.
And your radios have to go up because of that rent.
No,
Don't you lie.
I'm not.
You lie to us.
No, because the market of internet dictates price. I can go online and buy tires. I operate my business. I know what I pay. I know what I charge my customers. You don't.
I know,
So you
but
can't speak to that fact.
Just saying. I'm not, might not. I know you could sell them cheaper if you didn't have that $6,000 worth of rent. Or that 6,000 foot building put in. That's a no brainer.
Well,
I mean, if it was $5 radio, it's $5 radio.
but that's not the way that market works.
Totally different.
But
If
this
it's
is pretty much
regulated
a
market,
complaint
it's totally
driven,
different.
though.
It is, but
and-
it gets under my skin because they call me. They don't call you guys, they call me, and I don't know who the next mayor's gonna be, but they're gonna call somebody, cause I'm not gonna be here. So y'all, I'm trying to help y'all fix some of this, if y'all are willing to lessen the burden. They probably still will call me and want me to beg me to come down here and preach, but I'm not doing that.
So
Only if it affects me will I be there, and I'll be hot when I get there, if it's that bad. I'm telling you up front.
can we'll just specifically talk about the tire spot that I know of. The more tire for the tractor tires. How would this, as it's written, affect that?
I don't know if we should do that or not, Lloyd.
I don't know if I can give an interpretation
don't
on the
think we
spot
should do
with
that.
draft language.
Yeah, I don't
What
know.
I think really what the issue is basically your conflicts of law provision. You all are looking at this isolated from what someone may have lawfully permitted under the UDO. And so there's a way that we can work with the new nuisance ordinance to make sure that it doesn't usurp the permit and the operations that you have on your property for a lawful business. Like you talked about the salvage yard in that definition, means a business or person who possesses 5 or more derelict vehicles regularly engages in the buying and selling of used vehicle parts. That's different than what this nuisance statute is
yeah.
trying to regulate. And so that's going to be a burden on staff, but we certainly can try to address the conflicts of law that we would get with the UDO and the nuisance. You wouldn't want the nuisance to override your lawful use of the property that you've been doing for 15 years, that is properly shielded, and then all of a sudden, wait, I've got to put a tarp over some of my tires. I mean, I'm just saying that as a bad example, but there are conflicts of law provisions that we can address.
Just to answer the 2 questions I heard earlier, was it about the fire hazard? I mean, maybe fire hazard is something we need to define. I mean, I thought of it as, combustible materials. I didn't think of tires, but again, used oil, used gas, whatever it may be. And then there was something about display of products for sale. One thing I didn't highlight in number 1, because the front yard setback is obviously most likely going to be visible to the public, that is specifically meant for outdoor storage. And you can see display and or items for display and or sale. So again, if it was tires displayed or sale as part of the business, then that wouldn't fall under this, as long as it's within 1/3 of the setback and not within 20 feet of the road.
Y'all hear what I'm saying? Me personally, if it's a business, it's running a business and it pertains to that business and it's kept on their site, I just don't know how we can police it other than just maybe a health hazard. Because I mean, they're just running a business. It's not recreation. It's not for anybody to go up there. If anybody's up there messing around that, they're trespassing anyway after hours. So I have hardship with it. We have to deal with it all the time, even on construction. I have to carry extra insurance for if somebody comes in there after hours and falls down through the stairway hole or whatever. It raises the price of the home up because I can't eat that. Run about $1,500 a house. I can't eat it.
When, as I said, this is just staff's first
I-
stab at this, and so just looking for feedback.
And I'm just wanting to make sure, I'm just trying to make sure that these businesses that we got can stay, and any other businesses like them feel comfortable coming in here, especially with the price of land here, because we need them. As individuals around here, we need them, be it it's a cabinet shop, a body shop, all the body shops in Hendersonville, the fenders and everything's laying outside till they get a chance to haul them off. I mean, you see it right, drive down 64, they're everywhere. But it's just the way it is. It's just part of that cycle of business. It's not there 2 weeks later, they've hauled a load off, but they're constantly taking bent ones off and putting new ones on. They can't house all that stuff. To me, it would just be crazy to ask them to build a building to put all the bent fenders and bumpers and covers and stuff in before it gets a chance to get hauled off. And they actually make a little money by having it hauled off or hauling it off themselves. They make more if they haul it themselves. They just gotta have time to do it.
Does that say that outdoor storage of other items related to business and all other areas shall conform to so it can be done, it's just it doesn't cover the entire yard? Is that?
That's the intent of the 3rd setback. And again, I just took the 3rd from what the county had.
So there's nothing saying you can't have stuff you need to run your business stored outside. It's just, can't cover the whole property with it. I mean, I agree with you. We don't want to make it hard for businesses. But where's the reasonable compromise? Or do we just want to say, it's a business, we don't care?
Well,
What's
my
the
reasonable compromise is on this one with businesses. I can eat a little crow on this residential stuff, maybe. But for us to have something totally different, then you just go right past the water treatment plant right there, and they got a different rule for the same tire store, body shop. Guess where they're gonna locate? Right over there. Now come, any of these small businesses you're talking about like this, you know, and this affects the ones that's here. This is a nuisance ordinance. This ain't something that they gotta come in compliance with after the UDO. It's already in effect. And so I'm just trying to get it modified a little bit where it fits what I think is me, I guess. So they don't sound like nobody's with me, so me.
No, I'm not saying I'm not with you. I just want to know what's reasonable. Is there something we need to
When
do?
it comes to tires, it might be a number of tires. Because what they've got to now, I've talked to 14 different tire shops. And a lot of them end up back at the resale stores. But if they get 8 on the truck, the guy that bought them 8 has to take 8 with him. Unless they're gonna sell them to the other guys to go resell. If they got enough tread on them that they can be resale. So that's the way the state's got it now. And then each customer has to pay a $5 per tire, whatever it is, to get rid of that tire. But when you take them to over there, they gotta be clean, no water in them, so before you can turn them into landfill. So when they go, they wanna take a big old load because it's taking a few hours to make that transition. They don't wanna just take 4 days. They'd have to create a whole nother employee. And it goes for this, for vendors, all the body shops. You know, if we're not gonna allow them just to pitch it in a pile, the plastic in one, the metal in the other, and let it go to recycle when they get a chance to haul it. Just I don't get it. But that's me. I'm the only one.
I'll go to the next slide.
Sure.
So, standards for residential and other outdoor storage. So we do residential now, but we found a lot of ordinances also had prohibitions just on outdoor storage of solid waste on vacant lots. So that was at one we added in as C there. I know we talked about temporary construction sites, and Mayor Gons brought that up. And basically, you know, any outdoor storage is allowed basically as long as there's a permit for the project and the waste doesn't blow away onto someone else's property. For residential allowances for outdoor storage, it basically states it shall only be allowed if completely enclosed within a building, concealed by a fence, or concealed by an all-weather covering. All-weather covering is a fancy way of saying a tarp. Again, only so it's not visible at the property line or from a street. Again, talking about aesthetics here a bit, but again, our ordinance also has a blanket prohibition on junk vehicles now, which, so trying to find the middle ground here. Similar to the commercial, any storage that poses a public health hazard, fire hazard, stagnant water for mosquitoes or other insects and vermin would also be considered prohibited. Define it. Yeah, I don't know if that is defined, but I mean, we can look at that. I mean, basically, it's just meant to, you know, the plain language definition, but yeah. Yeah, it does state, provided the project is authorized under a valid and lawfully issued zoning compliance permit. I mean, again, if someone's doing a project with their house, building their deck, you know, I mean, this gets into why the UDO is so long, because you can think of all these different scenarios and you want to lock it down. And that is, you know, that is why the UDO is so long, is because staff needs that clear direction. And so again, it can be written in, it's just going to be a longer document to address those unique scenarios. But again, first draft, just looking for feedback on this. So the next one is specifically about, we're moving away from outdoor storage to junk motor vehicles. So we have separate allowances, or, you know, basically what's prohibited for non-residential and residential. So for commercial, it says outdoor storage of junk motor vehicles is permitted as long as the business is operated in a lawful place and manner, meaning they were permitted or got amnesty through the UDO or whatever it may be, and the vehicles necessary to the business, period. One thing that's defined in the code is what a nuisance vehicle is. So if the vehicle is open and, there's water getting into it and, the seats are molding and there's creatures living in it, stuff like that. So anything that becomes a nuisance vehicle, that's when that public health and safety concern is triggered. That would be prohibited. But basically what it says, if it's a junk vehicle and it's necessary for the business, it's allowed. No standards applied. For residential, a lot of this came out of the planning board discussion. People talking about obviously folks wanting, to restore cars with kids and, just having old vehicles on their property. So this draft states that if there's a residential property, they can have 1 to 3 junked motor vehicles in a side or rear yard. Again, as long as they're not viewable from another property or from a street. And then they can be covered with a tarp or a structure to prevent them from being visible from the street or adjacent property. That's what we don't have now, is basically the way it's written now. It just says if there's a junk motor vehicle, it's a violation, period, no matter where it is. So we tried to kind of split the middle here and have some basic standards. Again, this is very common in other ordinances. Now, a property can have more than 3 junk motor vehicles, but that's when they need to be located in a garage or shop. So in theory, you could have 3 vehicles you're restoring that are outside covered with tarps, and that's considered not visible. And then you may have more. Well, those ones are going to need to located in a structure that's fully enclosed. And if you have vehicles you got a vehicle restoration permit for, same thing that Henderson County does, that means you've gotten a permit with the town for special permission, that these standards don't apply because I'm actively restoring this vehicle and I may have a vehicle and a parts vehicle. This doesn't apply to that because basically you've got a permit from the town that you're restoring these vehicles. And that is mirrors basically what Henderson County has.
I do realize there's gonna be some vehicles out there that don't have registrations for it. Motor vehicles. But how would that be handled? Like you go out and there's a race car sitting here and it don't have a motor in it.
I mean, we'd probably go and just knock on it. Again, we would only be there for a complaint. And we would just probably go knock on the door and ask. I mean, that's how we would start. And again, getting into how this new ordinance is written, we would leave a door hanger if no one's there, or, if there's.
But you would say that was out of compliance.
Yeah, because we're using the state definition of what a junk vehicle is, which has, let me go back, because I know I had it.
State on that, that thing might just made a man $35,000 Saturday night. Somebody called it junk. Might be worth more than the motor.
So the general statutes,
Vehicle.
the general statutes state a junked motor vehicle is one that is partially dismantled or wrecked, or cannot be self-propelled, or is more than 5 years old and appears worth less than $500, or does not display a current license plate.
So all those are ors.
That's how it's.
So if it's a race car and it's worth more than $500, it's not junked. If it's, cause it and worth less than 500. If it can be self-propelled, it's not junk, registration or not.
And we usually check all those off. Yes.
And worst case, you throw a cover over it and we're done talking about it, right?
That's the intent.
Yeah.
I can clarify that language, but yeah, the intent was to allow someone to put a tarp over a vehicle and for it to be fine.
Or a cover or something like that,
Yeah.
whatever.
I'll ask you one other thing here, and I just gotta ask it now, because I'll forget to ever ask it again. Yeah, these cars like that'll have sponsors, they're gonna be considered signage.
Cars with what?
These cars will have sponsor names on them, business names on them, they're gonna be considered signage.
In the UDO? Well, this doesn't
You're right.
cover that.
Yeah, well, in the UDO then.
I don't remember all the sign stuff off the top of my head, but usually what ordinances say, and again, may not be applicable to ours, is that if the car does have a large logo and is specifically displayed out front for advertising purposes in the likes of a sign, then usually it would be considered a violation. But I'd have to check on that. I don't know if that's what our UDO says.
It's pretty much if you have a trailer, a tractor trailer, and you have the trailer in your front yard and it has your business name on it, that's operating on the same property the trailer is. That may or may, oh Lord, have mercy, this is getting,
Well,
Or if you're like Ingles and you park the big tractor
That's
trailer
what I
right
was
out
getting
front
at. I was-
as we are hiring.
yeah. But in reality, if it's on a race, I would
I
want.
just know of two cases in Hills River where these guys come home on Saturday night, and they got their 36 and 40 foot trailers wrapped with their sponsored logos on them.
Hmm.
And they're parked in the driveway, so they get a chance they might not take them out of the Monday or Tuesday to go to the next place.
I don't think that's applicable in this situation. Again, it's, you know, if I'm running a tire shop or the one next to the Burger King and I've got a trailer out there that hauls tires and on it is a big logo and my phone number and all that, come get your tires changed here. That's what we're talking about. But again, I need to check that because I'm not even sure if that's what's in the UDO.
That's kind of how we're getting my leave here. Why do you ask you?
Well, also there's a couple of cars running around town with wraps on them for advertisement. They make money for doing that through companies. Do they need to be permitted?
My understanding is no, because that's just, someone's free speech on their vehicle on the public roadway.
Okay.
Again, if they're intending to display, commercial message instead of having a permanent sign, I think that's the intent of those regulations. But again, I gotta look at that. Okay. The other one we talked about was clearer administration and procedures. So, how do I say this nicely? It needs to be much clearer than it is now. One thing we talked about too that I wanted to highlight is, and it might be in the next section, we do talk here specifically about how extensions are granted. That is something we just do informally now that is not really mentioned a whole lot in the ordinance. We talk about how extensions are granted when there's determination of continuing improvement on a project. We also put into the code basically that, the violation, in the vein of community focused enforcement, that if the violation is taken care of, we don't even need to issue a letter. So that's all going to be at the discretion of the code enforcement officer, which operates under the planning director and town manager. And I think the other thing I'm talking about is in the next section. There we go. The informal notice and courtesy warning. So that was something we heard loud and clear, was that, there was concern when all of a sudden people get this really formal first notice of violation from the town. And again, doing this community focused code enforcement, we wanted to have other mechanisms written into the code itself that basically states, even if it's someone 20 years down the road, someone's going to get a door hanger on a knock on the door or a courtesy educational letter before formal action's taken. So that's codified here on the left in the blue at the top. But basically the code enforcement officer shall provide the property owner, occupant, or tenant with informal written notice of the nuisance prior to issuing a formal notice of violation, allowing adequate time to be notified, prepare to address the violation, or appeal the decision. So remember, the appeal clock doesn't even start till we send the first formal notice out. So we're basically, I think the first informal notice is only for a 15-day period, but it's basically adding 2 extra weeks there. And then further down here, the first notice of violation, all of them now have 30-day compliance periods. The first we changed to 45. So technically we've added an extra month in this first notice and informal notice period, so folks can have time to appeal or reach out to staff, or they lost a letter, basically give them some grace in that beginning stage. So that is codified here. even included at the end that it's in the best interest of the town and the public to have community focused code enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. One thing we talked about when we were here a year ago in March of 25 was about how there's, just a couple properties that have racked up large fines just because the notices were issued and the fines ran primarily when it was just me in the department. So we're establishing a maximum total fine amount of $3,000. It equates to basically 2 months of fines because it's $50 a day. Every day is a separate violation. And so you're looking at, I think I did the math right, at about 3,000 for that.
But let me understand that correctly. So if you come to my house and I don't agree with you, but I'm willing to just pay you $3,000, that ain't what that means.
No, fines are a last resort.
Okay, but if we got to there, so I'm just.
Being low, no.
Well, I'm
So,
just wondering
yeah,
if
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not protection.
So
Can't buy it off. And say, oh, here's $3,000, go away.
But I'm just wondering if it's a max fine for my tires sitting out here. Where am I at with that?
it just means that, let's say we send you an informal notice, we knock on the door, we do all these things to try to reach out to you, we send you all the formal notices, and we never hear from you. At that final stage, that's when we get to issuing fines. And the way it's written is that that final violation letter only issues one $50 fine, but it says that, hey, if we don't hear from you in this next compliance period, 30 days, they're going to accrue. And so basically if 2 months go by and the fines accrue at $50 a day and it gets up to 3,000, that's the end of it. It's not going to rack up to 8,000 like that one other property example we talked about last year.
But it's not just gonna sit there as a $3,000 fine until forever.
Yeah, so the idea is, and this is in the ordinance today, is that if it gets to that point where there's no interaction, no effort made by that party, that's when the staff would engage with the town attorney, potentially, to go to court and basically have the judge say, you have to clean this up. Because if it's a court order to clean it up, there's more repercussions to that than, $3,000 a fine and town staff saying it. And again, the idea is to get compliance, and in talking to another attorney, there are situations where, these fines can be lowered or waived in a court of law because the point is to just get compliance with the ordinance. And again, as was mentioned earlier, these fines don't go into the planning department checking account. These are all remitted at the end of every fiscal year to Henderson County Public Schools. So just a recap, this is basically what the code enforcement process would look like with these changes. And I highlighted a few things. So again, only responding to complaints, staff would investigate, but here in the red, you see we have our informal notice, whether it's a courtesy warning letter or a door hanger, but something physical in writing, that's what it says in the ordinance. You've got 2 weeks or 15 days till that first compliance inspection, which also doesn't exist in the flow chart now. Then you go to the first notice of violation, but you can see this was up to the 45 days. So that's where that extra month comes in between those. And then the standard process picks up from there.
Okay, I got one question I'm a little confused on. I just need clarity on it. I think I understand. I'll make sure I hear it. The 1/3 setback rule in some of those instances, is that basically what it is? Like if it's 50 from the front and 1/3 back, you can't have anything in that front third?
Correct. Yeah, it's the zoning district setback for that property.
So if a commercial property joins residential or whatever, even though his property line is over here, and even if he had a fence, let's say, he can't put anything over next to that edge. He needs to pull it back.
Well, basically you can go into the setback 1/3 of the distance. So like, let's say the commercial district has a 20-foot side yard setback. That's probably a bad number because I can't do the math.
Okay.
But you could store, as long as it's not a nuisance and causing a public health and safety hazard outside of that setback, if it's related to the business, store it there.
Okay.
But once you get into that setback closer to the property line, that's where you're going to bump up against that.
Just 130 on it. Thing is,
So if you're storing something like a tire outside and you contract out with a company to come pick them up, to dispose of them, does that invoice or that timeline count for the time that's stored outside? Like, if the company you're contracting with is like, no, I will not come unless there's 100 tires and it's been 6 months, does that, are we
Is the clock
impeding that?
running?
Yeah,
The compliance clock, basically.
correct.
That's another specific situation I'd have to look at it and get back to you on.
But.
I mean, we're looking for voluntary compliance, so if someone says, hey, the truck's coming in a month,
That's what I was gonna ask.
you know, I mean, we're gonna work with them on that.
That's what I'm saying. If they're like, hey, here's my invoice for my,
Yeah,
you know, these guys come every,
yeah. I would say if it's within a reasonable time frame, again, we're only there because of a complaint. So if it's within a reasonable time frame, I think we're gonna work with those folks. If it's 6 months later, that might be an issue. You know, if they're sitting there for 6 months, because then we got another community member talking to us about why we haven't addressed their complaint. But again, tonight's just the first look at it. So really looking, you know, for consensus on any specific changes, any general feedback, and then just really next steps or further direction.
Everybody knows what I'm looking for. I'm just trying to keep the businesses to where they can operate to some extent. You know, we got waste oil drums on the outside of every one of these places we know of. We got, as long as, I'm okay as long as we take common sense approach, but I just don't want them to be able to go right outside town limits and construct the same facility and then do a little different. And us lose them or lose other potential ones coming in here. Because as we grow, we're gonna need more help like that, not less help like that, if the population gets bigger. And if you live right down the road from a guy, he's more apt to treat you like somebody than hit you hard or something if he knows you're a neighbor. Just being honest.
Well, it's always good to support the town residents too.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to make sure that this ain't too overbearing on these businesses. If y'all think I'm bad wrong, if there's stuff of you to knock me out of the way, please just think about it. It's not your typical storefront businesses, guys. This is you know, blue collar stuff, big time. It's get that thing off of there and get it out of here where we can walk around in. They've even got also regulations if they went by them, they can't have that stuff laying around the floor in there with them. They got to get it out there. But that's all I got to say.
I got one more, a quick hypothetical, since I got my wrist smacked earlier. Hypothetically, if I get a tire changed on my tractor, then there's a very high hypothetical chance that a lot of these tires already have fluid in them. So I would want some form of common sense put onto that you're not going to keep water out of a tire that's got water in it.
Filled with water.
Is that a better way to ask my?
So is that the case now? Is that, I mean, I know they're filled partially with water, you know, so.
I'm just saying,
so
you're
when the
never going to
ti-
get it all back out.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I just hate for that to be a problem.
Mm-hmm. But the tire can fall over and 95% of it drains out, right?
Yeah, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, you know, there's
It's just
still
hard
going to be,
get it all out of.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very hard.
Oh,
I think
water's
it
gonna
has
go-
to rise to a health hazard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm just-
maybe that's where we need to be clearer. You know, what I'm hearing is just what is a public health and safety hazard? You know, or maybe we need to define it as a significant public health and safety hazard. You know, with the water I talked about, not one tire or bird bath, but unmaintained swimming pool rising to that level. So that's the intent, but I mean, maybe there's more definition.
Tractor tires used to be filled with calcium chloride, right? Now it's more of an antifreeze.
Be-
All right,
Huh?
methanol. just whatever you could use to.
Something I don't want my dog licking up if it, I mean, that's pretty much, if it's antifreeze, you gotta do something with that anyway, but I don't think tractor tire, I don't think this, that's an agricultural thing. It's doing business, you take care,
Yeah, but it's just, this is a agricultural business. Yeah, I don't think this is a, a tire shop is not a bona fide farm.
Well, that's where they're gonna get changed, that we don't have a big enough to get them on.
Gotcha.
Some of these end up as tire swings.
Planter.
Road brakes.
I was gonna say planters.
I just tucking it out there.
But I think, so we can get this moving, guys, I think if y'all don't think I'm right, please tell him so we can get this moving on. I've heard talk to the general public about it. Where we at in census. I think I hate that Michael have to deal with it on a daily basis and staff, we just we'll do something, let's do it, get it ready to go here before long, not.
I mean, I think it needs to be, there's certain parts of it that need to be cleaned up. So, I mean, I think we need to keep moving on with what we're doing. Just to make their enforcement job easier. So.
Definitely think there needs to be a difference in commercial and residential.
I agree with that.
Absolutely.
That was something we should have done.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm just not a no restrictions on commercial yet.
I'm just saying.
But, and I think we do owe it to our staff, and we got amazing staff, and to help them with their jobs. If someone gets a warning or a violation or something like that, you're just doing your job.
Yeah.
It's our job to make it clear for you to do your job. So, and you don't have a lot of people call you up saying, I'm so glad you gave me that violation. Yeah, it just turned my life around. And no, you don't get that.
Sure.
So if you ever do, put it on the wall somewhere.
One suggestion, if I may, council, is, any adoption or change would have to go through a public hearing. And so tonight was the first night for getting your feedback. And what I would ask is there anything that there is consensus on changing from what you've seen tonight? If not, then what we would do potentially at the first meeting in April is to bring this to you all in a regular meeting. You would have another opportunity to react to it at that point. If there's consensus, change it at that point, then we can do that as well. And we can then set a public hearing for a future meeting. So again, to the mayor's point, it can continue moving forward, but we could move it out of the business meeting discussion phase and start getting it towards potential action at the first meeting in April, again, with multiple opportunities to still change it.
Are we talking about this part or this part? Or both of them?
I'm sorry.
You're talking about the nuisance in the definition.
Yes.
Right. Well, back in here and, when I was reading through this part here, I do like the differences that they now have between commercial and residential. That definitely needed to be done. Excuse me. But, in going through here, I was reading parts and there was concerns about, enforcement and discrepancies. And I noticed that it all went back to, the zoning officer instead of to the zoning department, to where he had sole yes or no power over it. And I think there needs to still be some kind of mediation in there to where, it's not just up to one person. It's whether it's the zoning administrator, the town manager, whoever, there needs to be some kind of mediation available. That way that things can be worked out.
Yeah, so Mike, and Councilmember Good, I appreciate you bringing that up. So Mike, just for clarification, that the zoning officer is a designation. So you are the zoning officer, not the code enforcement officer. So the code enforcement officer it's Kevin in this case. So the zoning officer would ultimately, that would go to the planning and zoning director here in the town of Mills River to make that determination. However, again, there's nothing that changes for the appeals process and going in front of the Board of Adjustment, correct?
No, and we actually defined code enforcement officer as a person designated by the planning director or town manager as an authorized delegate to enforce the provisions of this chapter. So
Okay.
the idea is that, you know, a superior is being reported to, and so internally, that's something that would be worked out in the department, that if there was an issue where a higher up needs to be brought in, that'd be the discretion of the supervisor or the manager.
That's
But
what
the
I
town
wanted to
manager,
Make sure that
okay.
that was,
but the town manager is correct. Anyone's decision can be appealed during that 30-day appeal timeline to the Board of Adjustment.
okay. And in looking through here, I found under exemptions, it said amplified sound, emanating from religious institutions. Most of the churches around here don't get out and have loud parties and stuff. You know, but if they was going to have a concert or something, rather than just make across the board exemption, could they not do like a permit like other people around here do?
If you want to change that, that's fine. That's in the noise ordinance section, and I didn't
Right.
touch that since that wasn't council's direction.
I can tell you where that came from. That exemption came because of Mills River Methodist, because they were playing the church bells over amplified speakers.
Those are Presbyterians do it too.
So that's where the original exemption, I don't know if you remember, James remembers when we had that, we had to put that exemption in for them.
There's a church down below my house ring bells every hour, I think up until midnight, and it don't bother me.
Yeah. So I mean, I agree with you. I mean, there may be a different set. Maybe we need to
Right.
clarify that.
Yeah, but I would ask, if there's clarification on a consensus of looking at that. Again, it's in a separate section. Mike did not touch that section for tonight, but it's something that could be by council consensus to look at. But I'm hearing right now, there's not consensus though to look at that. Is that correct?
Target practice, leave that alone. Second Amendment. Yeah. That's why we got the other amendments.
Just one point of clarification. Remember, this is an ordinance, just like the UDO, just like any other, that can be amended and changed and is a living document at any point in time. So again, I'm not trying to move the discussion on at all, but I'm just stating that this is not the only time these changes can be made by this body. So, you know, with your direction, we're happy to look at this at any point in time.
I mean, I was just going through here and looking.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to answer your other questions if you have some.
I think that's,
Separate the commercial and the residential to some reasonable. Make sure the definitions and all for staff can control it and understand it and not get the pinch. And maybe start to finish, it's how we take notes and everything in house. All that, just make sure all that's kosher. After that, only thing I'm really looking for now.
Do we, in the UDO, do we know what a junkyard is? Do we define that?
That's the beauty, again, I know it's a long document.
And to Mike's point, while he's looking that up, you know, one thing I think that's helpful for the community, if there's, you know, when they get to this portion of the meeting, hearing this, is that the document, the UDO document, as Mike was mentioning, is, you know, it's about the specific circumstances that come before us. So, you know, it's not a from first page to last page reader of 600 pages. It's I had this specific situation, I had this question, and the references and the cross references, as Mike was mentioning, makes the ability to get those answers so much faster than our current ordinances allow. So it's big. but it's not a novel to read. It's a guide, get the answers.
Yeah, a lot of that in there won't be used in specific situations. You have no
Exactly.
reason to Go to it for months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it.
So the UDO defines it under salvage and junkyard, and it says an establishment where junk waste, discarded, salvaged, or similar materials such as old metals, wood, slush, lumber, glass, paper, rags, etc., barrels, containers, are brought, sold, exchanged, baled, packed, disassembled, stored, or handled, including used lumber and building material yards, house wrecking yards, heavy equipment wrecking yards, and yards or places where salvaged house wrecking or structural steel materials are stored, handled, and sold. It includes automobile wrecking and automobile wrecking yards and establishments for the sale, purchase, or storage of secondhand cars, clothing, salvaged machinery, etc., etc., white goods, household goods, appliances, etc.
And that,
I don't see one.
There,
difference.
yeah, no, there is a state statute on junkyards. Regulates it differently than what Mike was just reading, but it's 136-141 Junkyard Control Act. And it's got its own independent regulations and standards.
And that's under transportation, right? So that's
136 is like Department. of
DOT
Transportation.
rules, yeah. But I'm happy to take a look at that definition and just confirm there's alignment there with what we're talking about.
make sure we got enough consensus on which way to travel here. Mike, please speak up.
My recommendation right now, based on the conversation, is Mike has you all have provided some notes to Mike to go back for some further clarification. If you all are comfortable, what we'll do, we'll make those minor modifications. And then we would bring this forward instead of it being blue lined and red lined. We bring you a document for you all to react to at the next regular agenda meeting. And at that point, having a conversation with a potential request of setting a public hearing. That's probably the cleanest approach. However, if there's anything, to your point, Mayor, about guidance on changing anything, I'd recommend that consensus now so we can bring a cleaner document to you then.
Sure, that's what I'm looking for. Plain document possible for them. I mean, if y'all sitting here thinking that, you know, these tires shouldn't be outside, that these fenders and stuff shouldn't be outside, in certain cases, that's just what I can bring up to you. Don't need to happen. You need to tell the man, I'm okay with it being out there. I'm okay as long as it's not just there forever. If it's continuously the red pen and all the stuff that's piled this month and it gets hauled off, you go by there 2 months later and there's all kind of different stuff in that pile. You know,
And I'm okay with that. I want to make sure that there is some, right now it's like a blanket and that's what I'm not for.
okay.
There's got to be some
And
continuance.
if y'all see a number of tires or something that's allowed outside.
And I don't want to get in the count tires.
I know it's tough, it's tough. Tell the
Also,
man.
the scrap metal, there's the price. A lot of times people will hold on to it until the price is up and then take it.
Yeah. I just don't want somebody holding on to it for 10 years. But like, yeah, I'm waiting on it to come back.
And I mean, if y'all have a date, tell the man. I mean, see, if they go by and they see the same pile there, 3 months later, after a nuisance, after somebody's complained, and that same exact pile is still there and it didn't get recycled or whatever y'all call it, then tell the man. Just wanna get it behind us if we can. I don't know the magic number, but I know it's moving. I just don't know how often it's moving.
I think it might be longer than we're sort of thinking, just because some of these places do. Yeah, but it's busy. You know, maybe they're giving you a little bit unrealistic, you know, long timelines, but
I've heard the store would take it on a slow day, but don't get any slow days around here, and I have to take it when I get my
Yeah.
dump truck, and make it easy to get it out of the truck. So maybe when my brother's got a chance to run by here with a tractor, bump it up in the dump truck, there's all kinds of scenarios. I don't know.
And if I may, Mayor, one of the things, and I don't want to cloud the conversation here, it's also one of the conversations around being complaint driven. What is the expectation of this council for the complainant as well for these items as well? So again, not to say that it needs to be short or long term. However, if we have a resident that has made a complaint that fits within these definitions, how long is it, is there, as a reasonable expectation for them to expect that to be addressed at the same time? Because that's what we as staff would be talking to them about. Hey, it's a 3-month process, 6-month process, et cetera.
So I'm okay with that process that we have in place now, where they do they go out, if they find it, they give 30 days. As long as they're making progress and clean it up, and they are cleaning it up, then they give them a little time, so on and so forth. And my problem is, I just don't always agree. I'm not agreeing with how it's written out. I have heartburn over that, you know.
I like the new model better with you having a visit first in the 15 days. I prefer that much more.
And some won't think twice about it, they'll just rectify it and be done with, and that's good too. But, you know, if they've got a legitimate thing, so man, we've had them in here when we had what they considered $8,000 truck. He ended up scrapping the thing because he thought he was gonna get in trouble, but he was gonna start hitting 50 days, so he ended up just, crunching it up on and off.
Well, also,
Get scared. I don't want my people scared, you know, I mean, I get it's an enforcement thing, but, I don't want them to be scared of it.
well, if you've got a business and you've been operating here for years and somebody buys a house up on the mountain behind you, well, they start complaining about you. They knew what was down there when they bought the property and built the house.
Understood.
I mean,
But we can't actually ask them that in the complaint.
Well, and then that's what I just want for clarification. I was actually talking about the person who made the complaint.
Yeah.
So for instance, even in a place where a business may be working, they may store something new there after a person's moved in there. So again, the business may be established, but now that the person's there, it may not have been in sightline before. It also may not have been stored there before, but now some action has been had. My question is we also, just as much as we talk to the person who we're trying to rectify the complaint, we're also talking to the person who made the complaint and trying to set expectations for them, and trying to set expectations for the community. So I'm just trying to understand your balance there of the person who feels that there's a nuisance in us achieving or not achieving an expectation, as well as the person who has the complaint against them, and how we provide them with as much flexibility for moving things or something like that.
And when it comes to residential stuff, I get it, because you kind of got to do what I kind of got to do. I get that. But when it's commercial or something, it's a little different. I mean, it's just a little different. Just a little, not much, just a little different.
And I would have less heartburn about it, maybe if it was businesses that are operating in a residential zoning district, that their code enforcement was tighter than a business that's operating in industrial. Because if it's zoned industrial and you got stuff stored outside, it's zoned industrial. But if you're zoned, rural residential, and you're doing something that's business and you're storing things, that's not really what the intent of that zoning district.
But what sucks about that is the only time we're gonna have that if the CDO passes is pretty against the one.
And that's true, yes. But they can get and I think that's the thing, when they go to get, what is it?
Rural mix.
Rural risk. When they go to get that, then maybe there's some language where you say, if you're storing stuff outside, as long as, it doesn't get to a point where it's accumulating in a thing, and then like, if he goes and checks it, somebody complains and he goes out 6 months and the pile keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, he can obviously look at it and say, like, they're not doing anything to make this.
Yeah, they're taking pictures and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's fine, but if the pile like goes up and then it goes down, and then it goes up 2 months later and it goes down, that's fine, because he can see, obviously, they're in the process of doing it.
They're just doing business.
Right. I just don't want it to just start stacking, and then they go out, then you get, 300 people in here complaining about it. We're like, yeah, we can't do anything because commercial can do anything.
Bad thing is we had one that we're pretty sure that we don't have a name, they ain't come forward. But same guy was allowing her to put their household trash in the dump. So this hit, complaint they quit. And then they started back again after it explained up, so, so he just went down and told them very politely, no, you ain't putting that in there no more, sorry. Then he said he wouldn't work on the vehicle anymore, but that's what you're gonna have with some of this. Sure.
One thing the town manager said that maybe think of something I forgot to mention earlier was about anonymous complaints. So anonymous complaints are still allowed, but there was a request to basically have some repercussions for abuse of that. And actually, the noise ordinance already had something written in that section that abuse of noise complaints, basically could result in a violation as well. So I didn't highlight it because I was going through it quickly, but we actually copy pasted that into the nuisance section. So if there is abuse where someone's repeatedly making complaints that staff determines are unfounded, there are repercussions to that now.
Yeah, and thank you, Mike, because you actually reminded me, one other thing I promise I'm gonna be quick on this, is that they could do anonymous complaints, and then they won't be kept up to, up on the status of that complaint they put forward. But if we do have information within the system, we do update that within the system, which will provide updates on what's going on. So that's why I brought that forward as well, is because we have gotten into situations where, people have said, why hasn't this action moved forward yet? What is the holdup? Why are we not moving faster? Et cetera. And that's just the other side of the nuisance ordinance that, at least I wanted to bring up for
What I
discussion.
will say, if they come in here, they give you their phone number, better put it in that chart, because if I'm not mistaken, there's federal law that we have to reveal all that information to whoever we're getting ready to find. I don't think there's a safeguard. If they give you any information other than, I'm a anonymous scholar and I want you to go look at this.
Yeah, I mean, I would look at the attorney to make the overall.
It's just all public record.
Yeah, it's all public record.
And it's clarified in the nuisance ordinance that basically anonymous complaints will not get a follow-up from staff. But if you do want follow-up, it does actually say in here, be aware it's a public record that can be requested by any third party. And that's actually similar to what Henderson County, I believe, has on their form also.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah, okay with that.
Yeah.
Make sure we keep it legal. When we take any information down, let's make sure we get it jotted down.
Every time we get a complaint, it goes into that smart gov system.
Okay.
So it's all out there in the cloud.
Good. Anything else? Any future agenda items? Anything?
Nothing from us other than what we've heard so far tonight. Just for clarification, we're going to bring this item forward, the regular agenda at the next meeting, and then we also have a note to bring forward the three options that were presented for the hazard prevention ordinance back at the next regular agenda meeting as well. Is that correct?
For discussion.
Or maybe the next business meeting for discussion, unless you think that there's going to be an action associated with it.
Well, I would think that one has to go in front of the public hearing also, wouldn't it?
Well, just to potentially set, yes.
Yeah, okay, so
Yeah, I could put them both on the regular agenda.
maybe.
Do we have
Sure.
to have different public hearings for this? Or since it's going to the UDO, can it just be part of the UDO public
well,
hearing?
this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is just a discussion about how you would like the floodplain.
Right.
Okay.
So if there is, unless you want to change them sooner, there would be no need for a hearing.
And that, just for clarification, I believe Mr. Limke's point was to get it changed. I don't believe it recommended only through the UDO. I think that from the Ag Advisory Board, it would be just to look at the hazard prevention ordinance and update it. Our recommendation could be, not our recommendation, but one thing to consider is you could put it as a part of the UDO, keep the hazard prevention ordinance as is, but make those changes. That would be one public hearing.
So I'm gonna say this. If I'm willing to give up the little bit of stuff for the ag, I would like to see us also looking at prevention ordinance to give some governmental, back, where I said that we need to be treated like everyone else. If we're gonna give it back to these farmers, I think we need to be able to give us and other government entities the right to deal or whatever to maybe say get our ADA boat access in. Our, the things that we've run into since we put it in place. So look at that for us as well. Okay? Make some grant money opportunities maybe available easier later on. That makes sense to everybody what I said.
We can make sure we bring that forward as well. And,
Okay.
but again, just for clarification, do you want it to be a part of the UDO update, or would you rather look at it as a potential change in
I'm
that?
okay with that. I was under the understanding though that the nuisance ordinance didn't have a placeholder in the UDO. Does it or does it not? No. So,
Mhm.
so ain't we gonna have to treat it like a regular special, public hearing?
I think we're
Yes,
talking
that
about
would
two,
be the-
we're
that
talking
would be-
about two different things.
Yeah, that
We're
would be the
talking about the
regular meeting.
hazard. He's
Yeah.
talking about the hazard.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Oh, so the two different things being just hazard related.
No, what I'm recommending, the regular meeting is going to have the nuisance ordinance on it at the next meeting. That one,
Okay.
that's clear on that one. The question is around the flood hazard prevention. Are we having a discussion about potential changes for the UDO only? Or do you believe you're going to want to make changes prior to the UDO potential adoption?
I don't necessarily think I want that.
Okay.
It's putting a lot on everybody.
Yeah,
Okay, so yeah, so then that would be a part of the business meeting.
okay, all right, perfect. Anything else? Going once, going twice, 3 times? I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And none. Righty then.